Picture this: a team of modern engineers, armed with laser precision tools and cutting-edge software, standing before an ancient Inca fortress. Their faces are a mix of disbelief and admiration as they study massive stone blocks, each weighing tons, fitted together so seamlessly that not even a razor blade can slip between them. No mortar, no modern machinery, just pure ingenuity that defies logic even today. How did a civilization without iron tools, without the wheel, achieve feats that leave our brightest minds scratching their heads? That's the mystery. We're diving into the astonishing world of Inca technology. While we often think of ancient civilizations as primitive, the Inca were master innovators, solving problems with such brilliance that their creations still stand centuries later, untouched by time. From earthquake-proof architecture to intricate road systems spanning mountains, their advancements weren't just practical, they were downright revolutionary. And here's the kicker: many of their techniques remain secrets we've yet to fully unravel. This isn't just a story about stones and structures, it's about human potential. The Inca didn't have the tools we take for granted, yet they built an empire that thrived in some of the planet's harshest landscapes. Imagine crafting suspension bridges from woven grass that could carry armies, or designing water systems so precise they rival modern hydraulics. These weren't lucky accidents, they were the results of centuries of observation, experimentation, and sheer genius. And over the course of this journey, we'll uncover 50 of their most jaw-dropping technologies, each one a testament to what's possible when creativity meets necessity. So buckle up, you're about to see the past in a whole new light. Take a close look at the walls of Sacsayhuamán, the colossal fortress overlooking Cusco. These aren't your ordinary stacked stones. Each block is a masterpiece of polygonal masonry, with jagged edges that somehow interlock like a giant three-dimensional puzzle. Some of these stones weigh over 100 tons, yet they're fitted so tightly that, even after 500 years of earthquakes, you still can't slip a piece of paper between them. How did the Inca achieve this insane precision without steel tools, without even a simple wheel to move these behemoths? Experts have spent decades trying to crack this mystery. One theory suggests the Inca used a technique called keystone cutting, where masons shaped each block by trial and error, tapping them into place like a blacksmith forging metal. Others believe they softened the stone with a plant-based solvent, an ancient recipe lost to time. But here's the wildest part: modern engineers with laser-guided tools have tried to recreate these walls, and they still can't match the perfection of the original. And then there's the question of transport. Without beasts of burden or wheeled carts, the Inca likely dragged these stones across miles of rugged terrain using log rollers, ropes, and sheer manpower. Some legends even claim they used sound frequencies to levitate the blocks, though that's more speculation than fact. What we do know is this: polygonal masonry wasn't just about strength. The irregular shapes acted like shock absorbers, making the walls virtually earthquake-proof. While our modern buildings crumble under seismic pressure, these ancient structures shrug it off like it's nothing. The real kicker: the Inca left no written records of their methods. Every theory we have is pieced together from fragments of archaeology and oral tradition. So when you stand before those walls today, you're not just looking at stones, you're staring at a technology so advanced, it defies our understanding of what ancient civilizations were capable of. Now imagine scaling the steep slopes of the Andes, where thin air and jagged terrain make farming seem impossible. Yet the Inca didn't just survive here, they thrived. They're secret terraces, but these weren't just simple steps carved into mountainsides. They were masterpieces of agricultural engineering, designed with a sophistication that puts modern farming to shame. Each tier acted like a giant sponge, capturing rainwater and directing it through a network of channels so precise, every plant got exactly what it needed. And the genius didn't stop there. By staggering these terraces across different elevations, the Inca created microclimates, warm valleys for corn, cooler heights for potatoes, effectively turning a single mountainside into a multi-crop supermarket. What's truly mind-blowing is how these systems fought erosion. While today's farms lose tons of topsoil yearly, Inca terraces held their ground for centuries. They built retaining walls with stones angled slightly inward, so when earthquakes struck, the walls settled tighter instead of collapsing. And beneath the surface, layers of gravel, sand, and soil acted like a natural drainage system, preventing floods during heavy rains and storing water during droughts. Modern agronomists have studied these designs and found them more efficient than many industrial irrigation systems, all achieved without a single metal tool. But here's the kicker: the Inca didn't just build these terraces once. They constantly experimented, adjusting wall heights or crop rotations based on weather patterns passed down through generations. Some researchers believe they even used polished stones to reflect sunlight onto plants, a primitive form of greenhouse technology. While we rely on satellites and sensors to monitor soil health, the Inca read the land like a living textbook, adapting their methods to nature's rhythms. That's why, centuries later, many of their terraces still produce crops long after modern farms nearby have turned to dust. Think about that the next time you see a terraced hillside. You're not just looking at ancient farming, you're seeing a blueprint for sustainable agriculture that we're still struggling to match. In a world racing toward high-tech solutions, perhaps the real innovation isn't in our gadgets, but in rediscovering what the Inca knew all along: how to work with the earth, not against it. High above the roaring Apurimac River, where winds whip through mountain passes, the Inca engineered a solution to an impossible problem: how to cross some of the most dangerous terrain on Earth. Their answer: bridges woven entirely from grass. Not just any bridges, but suspension masterpieces like the Sacsayhuamán, a fiber span that could carry armies, traders, and even llama caravans across dizzying gaps with nothing but twisted iku grass beneath their feet. Forget steel cables or concrete, this was engineering stripped down to its purest form, yet so effective that some of these bridges remained in use for over 500 years. The secret lay in the weave. Villagers would harvest stiff Andean grass, twist it into sturdy ropes as thick as a man's arm, then braid these into massive cables. Teams on either side of the canyon would pull the cables taut, anchoring them to stone abutments carved directly into bedrock. But here's where it gets brilliant: the entire bridge was designed to flex. Unlike rigid modern structures, these swaying walkways absorbed the forces of wind and foot traffic, dancing with the elements rather than fighting them. Engineers today estimate some could hold up to 200 people at once, a staggering feat for something made of organic material. What's even more remarkable is how the Inca turned maintenance into a ritual. Every year, communities would gather to rebuild the Sacsayhuamán from scratch, passing down weaving techniques through generations. This wasn't just practicality, it was a living textbook of engineering knowledge. They'd first cut the old bridge loose, letting it tumble into the river below, then work for days braiding new cables in a festival of teamwork. No blueprints, no written instructions, just hands-on wisdom refined over centuries. Modern architects call this disposable infrastructure, but for the Inca it was simply common sense. Why let a bridge decay when you can renew it annually? And these bridges weren't isolated wonders, they formed a network. Stretching over 25,000 miles across the empire, they connected cliffside roads and mountain passes into a single cohesive system. Messengers called chasquis could sprint across them at breakneck speeds, relaying news from Quito to Cusco faster than horses could in other civilizations. That's right, the Inca outran the postal systems of Europe and Asia using nothing but grass ropes and sheer human endurance. Stand on the rebuilt Sacsayhuamán today and you'll feel it breathe beneath you. Each step makes the bridge sway gently, a reminder that the Inca didn't just build for function, they built in harmony with the land. While our steel bridges corrode and require endless repairs, their design embraced impermanence as a strength. It's a lesson modern engineers are only beginning to rediscover. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't about resisting nature, but learning to move with it. Beneath the misty peaks of Machu Picchu, hidden in plain sight, lies one of the Inca's most breathtaking achievements, a water system so precise it rivals modern hydraulics. Without pumps, without pipes, they mastered gravity to choreograph every drop of water across the city. 16 fountains cascaded down the terraces, fed by a network of stone channels so meticulously engineered that they still function today. How did a civilization without advanced tools create a water distribution system that modern engineers can't help but admire? The secret starts at the summit. High above the citadel, the Inca carved a spring-fed collection system into the mountainside, channeling water through a primary canal with a gradient so exact, just 2%, that it maintained perfect flow without erosion. They lined these channels with precisely fitted stones, creating a self-cleaning system where sediment settled in designed basins while crystal-clear water raced onward. And here's the stroke of genius. Every fountain, every secondary channel branched from the main line in a calculated sequence, ensuring equal water pressure at every tier. The first fountain, reserved for the emperor, flowed strongest, while subsequent outlets still delivered ample water to baths, kitchens, and ceremonial sites, all through gravity alone. But water was only half the story. The Inca engineered their entire city to breathe with the rain. Terraces weren't just for farming, they acted as massive sponges, absorbing runoff and directing it through subterranean drains that prevented flooding. Stone steps doubled as spillways during downpours, while hidden gutters beneath buildings kept foundations dry. Archaeologists have found layers of gravel and sand beneath plazas, functioning like an ancient French drain system centuries before Europe adopted similar concepts. What's truly staggering is how they adapted to seasonal changes. During dry months, they diverted water to priority areas using manually placed stone baffles. In the rainy season, overflow channels silently funneled excess water away from structures. Modern simulations show their drainage system could handle storms that would swamp today's engineered cities. And unlike our brittle concrete pipes, their stone conduits flexed slightly during earthquakes, avoiding cracks that would cripple rigid systems, perhaps the most haunting detail. The Inca never saw their water network as separate from the land. Channels followed natural contours, fountains aligned with sacred sightlines, and engineers even incorporated the sound of flowing water into spiritual spaces. While we fight nature with steel and sensors, they listen to it harnessing physics with an intimacy we've forgotten. Walk through Machu Picchu today, and you'll hear their legacy in every trickle, a symphony of stone and water, playing the same perfect notes for 500 years. Stretching across some of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, from coastal deserts to snow-capped peaks, the Sacsayhuamán wasn't just a road system, it was the lifeblood of the Inca Empire. Imagine a highway network so vast it could wrap around the entire planet, built without iron tools, wheeled carts, or even written language. While modern asphalt crumbles after a few decades, these roads have weathered 5 centuries of landslides, earthquakes, and erosion. How did they pull it off? The genius began with adaptability. Instead of forcing nature to conform, the Inca worked with it. In steep mountains, they carved staircases directly into cliff faces, turning sheer drops into navigable paths. Along deserts, they built raised causeways to avoid flood zones, while in swampy areas, they laid stone pavements that floated atop the mud. Some sections suspended over deep ravines used cantilevered stones, a technique so stable that hikers still use these bridges today. And unlike our rigid highways that crack under temperature shifts, the Sacsayhuamán flexed. Their engineers mixed gravel and clay for drainage, ensuring heavy rains washed through rather than pooling. Modern road crews spend millions repairing potholes. The Inca built roads that repaired themselves, but durability was only half the story. This network was the empire's nervous system. Relay runners called chasquis could sprint messages from Quito to Cusco over 1,000 miles in just 7 days, faster than colonial horses centuries later. Rest stations called tambos dotted the routes every 12 miles, stocked with supplies for travelers and armies. The roads even had built-in accounting systems. Knotted quippers recorded goods moving between provinces, turning pathways into economic pipelines. Compare that to today's gridlocked freeways where a single accident paralyzes traffic for hours. The real kicker, while modern roads divide landscapes, the Quihapac wove them together. It connected ecosystems, cultures, and altitudes, allowing maize from lowland farms to reach highland cities and tropical feathers to adorn mountain temples. Every path aligned with sacred geography, curving around a pew's sacred peaks, rather than bulldozing through them. Modern engineers are just beginning to grasp the sustainability of these designs, experimenting with permeable pavements and wildlife corridors. Yet the Inca mastered it half a millennium ago, proving that the most advanced infrastructure isn't about dominating nature, it's about moving in harmony with it. Stand on a surviving stretch today, and you'll walk the same stones that once carried emperors, armies, and the pulse of an entire civilization. When the ground shakes violently beneath your feet, most buildings have two choices: collapse or crack. But Inca structures had a third option: sway like trees in the wind. Their architectural secrets turned deadly seismic forces into harmless motion, creating cities that didn't just survive earthquakes, they laughed at them. Modern engineers call this dynamic stabilization, but the Inca mastered it 5 centuries ago with nothing but stone and intuition. Start with the trapezoid, an Inca signature. Every doorway, every window frame angled slightly inward toward the top. This wasn't just an aesthetic choice, it was a seismic lifeline. When tremors hit, these shapes redistributed energy outward, preventing the deadly rack effect that collapses rectangular structures. The walls themselves leaned subtly inward too, like a boxer bracing for impact. During quakes, they'd settle tighter rather than toppling, a feature modern builders now mimic in skyscrapers. But here's what's wild. While our reinforced concrete high-rises need expensive shock absorbers, the Inca achieved similar stability by carving stones with microscopic precision. Their blocks fit so snugly that during shaking, they'd grind against each other harmlessly, dissipating energy like ball bearings in a machine. The real magic lay beneath the surface. Inca foundations weren't rigid slabs but flexible platforms. They'd layer gravel and sand beneath stonework, creating a floating base that absorbed shocks like a trampoline. In Machu Picchu, entire terraces sit atop engineered rubble that still shifts gracefully during quakes, something modern, seismic isolation systems try and often fail to replicate with steel springs. Archaeologists discovered some structures actually improved after tremors, as settling stones locked into tighter positions. Meanwhile, colonial buildings erected atop Inca foundations crumbled centuries ago. Compare this to modern failures. In 2010, Haiti's magnitude 7 quake flattened thousands of concrete buildings, while Chile's 8.8 quake the same year caused significantly fewer collapses thanks to strict seismic codes inspired by ancient designs. Yet even today, engineers struggle to match Inca resilience. Our steel-framed towers rely on ductility, bending without breaking but often sustain costly damage. The Inca approach was simpler: let the stones dance. Their structures lacked rigid mortar, allowing blocks to momentarily separate and realign during shaking, then settle back seamlessly. No repairs needed. The most humbling lesson: the Inca built this knowledge through observation, not calculation. Without seismographs or physics equations, they decoded the land's rhythm. Their stonemasons likely felt minor tremors and adjusted techniques over generations. modern engineers now study these designs for disaster-proofing cities, proving that sometimes the future of innovation lies buried in the past. Stand in Cusco after an earthquake, and you'll see Spanish colonial churches in ruins while Inca walls stand unshaken, whispering secrets we're still learning to hear. In the thin air of the Andes, where temperatures plunge below freezing at night and soar under a relentless sun by day, the Inca transformed a humble potato into a survival superfood. The process, called chuño, wasn't just preservation, it was culinary alchemy. Families would spread potatoes across high-altitude plains, letting the cold night freeze them solid, then trample them underfoot to squeeze out moisture as the daytime sun thawed them. After days of repeating this cycle, what remained were lightweight, rock-hard nuggets that could last for decades. Imagine a pantry stocked with food that never spoiled, even without refrigeration. This was the Inca's version of a freezer powered by nature itself. The brilliance of chuño lay in its simplicity. Unlike modern freeze-drying machines requiring electricity and precision controls, the Inca used the Andes' extreme climate as their laboratory. The repeated freezing and drying broke down toxins in bitter wild potatoes, making them edible while concentrating nutrients. A single serving of chuño packed twice the calories of fresh potatoes, along with a boost of calcium and iron, critical for communities living at oxygen-starved altitudes. And because the process removed nearly all moisture, armies and messengers could carry months' worth of supplies in lightweight sacks. When needed, chuño could be rehydrated into soups or ground into flour, becoming the backbone of everything from daily meals to emergency rations. But chuño's real impact was scale. The Inca Empire fed millions without farms that could produce year-round. Warehouses called colcas stored mountains of chuño alongside other preserved goods, creating a buffer against crop failures. Spanish chroniclers recorded storehouses stocked with enough chuño to feed entire regions for years, a food security system unmatched until modern times. Today, NASA studies chuño for space travel, marveling at its shelf stability and nutritional density. Yet modern attempts to replicate it often fail. The natural freeze-thaw rhythm of the Andes proves hard to mimic artificially. What's often overlooked is how chuño shaped culture. Different varieties, black chuño tunta and white chuño, became regional specialties, traded across the empire like gourmet ingredients. The process itself turned into communal events, with families working together under the stars, transforming hardship into tradition. While we rely on factories and chemicals to preserve food, the Inca leveraged their environment's harshness, turning a survival challenge into a technological triumph. Bite into a piece of chuño today, and you're tasting more than a potato. You're experiencing a 500-year-old solution to one of humanity's oldest problems: how to thrive when nature gives you nothing but ice, sun, and ingenuity. Deep in the earth, beneath the soaring temples and terraced mountains, the Inca were mastering a craft that would dazzle even the finest European smiths: metallurgy without flame. While the Old World relied on roaring bellows and towering blast furnaces, Andean metalworkers tamed fire with nothing but wind and ingenuity, their secret. The huara, clay wind furnaces shaped like inverted cones, strategically placed on high ridges to catch the Andes' relentless winds. These natural bellows channeled gusts through precisely angled vents, creating temperatures hot enough to smelt copper and tin into bronze alloys so superior they outlasted Spanish steel. But bronze was just the beginning. The Inca's true metallurgical masterpiece was tumbaga, a gold-copper alloy that baffled conquistadors. By blending these metals, they created a material with gold's luster but copper's strength, perfect for ceremonial objects that wouldn't bend or crack. Spanish chronicles describe rulers drinking from tumbaga cups that rang like bells when struck, their surfaces gleaming as if made of pure gold. Modern tests reveal the alloy's secret: depletion gilding. Artisans would treat finished pieces with acidic plant juices, dissolving surface copper to leave behind a thin, flawless gold veneer. The result, objects that looked solid gold but used a fraction of the precious metal, a trick that saved resources while dazzling onlookers. Their toolmaking defied expectations too. Inca bronze chisels and crowbars weren't crude imitations of European designs, they were purpose-built for Andean stonework. Craftsmen alloyed arsenic with copper to create tools harder than standard bronze, capable of shaping granite with patient precision. Archaeologists have found worn chisel tips showing signs of being repeatedly annealed, heated, and cooled to maintain toughness. This wasn't hammer and anvil brute force, it was a nuanced understanding of metal's memory. While European blacksmiths relied on iron's brute strength, the Inca coaxed performance from bronze through meticulous alloy recipes and heat treatments. Perhaps most astonishing was their goldsmithing. Without dyes or presses, they crafted seamless golden garments from hammered sheets so thin, Spanish invaders mistook them for fabric. A surviving tunic in Bolivia's Museo de Oro contains over 20,000 individually riveted gold platelets, each no thicker than a fingernail, mimicking the scales of a fish. They even developed a form of soldering using gold dust mixed with salt, heated until the particles fused, a technique modern jewelers call colloidal hard soldering, believing it was only invented in the 19th century. The tragic irony, Spanish melting pots erased centuries of innovation overnight. What survives hints at a metallurgical tradition that viewed metal not just as material, but as a bridge between earth and heaven. Where Europeans sought to dominate metals with force, the Inca conversed with them, listening to the way alloys sang when struck, observing how tembaga changed color in different lights. Their legacy whispers through the few surviving pieces: a crown that chimes in the wind, a dagger that never rusts, a cup that still glows as if lit from within. These weren't just tools and treasures, they were metalsmithing turned to poetry. High above Cusco, where the thin Andean air makes stars burn brighter, the Coricancha temple stood not just as a shrine, but as a celestial calculator. Its walls, once sheathed in gold, were etched with precision-cut niches and windows aligning perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise. On that morning, sunlight would pierce through like a laser beam, striking a sacred golden disk with such accuracy it could set a calendar by. This wasn't mere symbolism, it was astronomy elevated to an exact science, achieved without lenses or telescopes. The Inca didn't just watch the skies, they conversed with them. Across the empire, pillars called sucancas acted as mountaintop markers. When the sun touched specific pillars during equinoxes, it signaled planting or harvest times. At Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone, a carved granite gnomon, cast shadows so precise it could pinpoint the December solstice within hours, rivaling modern ephemeris calculations. But the real marvel was how they compensated for altitude. At 13,000 feet, atmospheric refraction distorts celestial positions, yet their observations remained uncannily accurate. Modern astrophysicists suggest they may have used water-filled basins as natural mirrors, stabilizing star reflections despite the thin air's turbulence. Compare this to early European observatories. While Tycho Brahe's 16th-century instruments required painstaking manual adjustments, Inca astronomy was baked into architecture. The Coricancha's trapezoidal windows framed Venus's 8-year cycle, and its eastern wall aligned with the Pleiades' heliacal rising, an event still used by Andean farmers to predict rains. Even their dark constellations, formed by interstellar dust clouds rather than stars, mapped seasonal changes with eerie precision. The kicker, they achieved this without written records. Knowledge was encoded in architecture, oral traditions, and knotted quippers. When Spanish chroniclers asked how they predicted eclipses, elders simply pointed to the walls. Today, archaeologists using laser scans discovered hidden sightlines in ruins, proof that entire cities doubled as observatories. At Chanquillo, 13 towers form a stone, toothed horizon that tracks the sun's yearly movement with a margin of error smaller than 2 degrees, a feat unmatched until the invention of the sextant. Stand beneath those ancient alignments today and you'll grasp the true genius. The Inca didn't just study the cosmos, they wove it into daily life. While modern telescopes peer deeper into space, their stone sentinels whisper a timeless lesson. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't about seeing farther, but understanding what's already above us. Walk through the narrow stone corridors of Ollantaytambo, and you might experience something inexplicable. A whisper spoken 20 meters away reaches your ears as clearly as if someone stood beside you. These whispering walls aren't folklore. They're a deliberate feat of acoustic engineering where Inca architects shaped stone to bend sound in ways that defy modern physics. How did a civilization without decibel meters or sound wave equations create spaces where voices travel unnatural distances while other frequencies simply vanish? The secret lies in the angles. Inca builders carved walls with precise inclines and parabolic curves, using stone surfaces as natural amplifiers. At sites like Moray, a series of concentric circular terraces, a person speaking at normal volume in the center can be heard clearly at every level despite the vast difference in elevation. Modern audio engineers have mapped these spaces and found they function like giant stone megaphones, channeling sound waves upward with minimal distortion. But here's the twist: certain frequencies, particularly those in ceremonial chants, resonate longer in these spaces while everyday noises fade quickly. This wasn't accidental, it was architectural filtering, turning ritual sites into natural surround sound systems. Some theories suggest the Inca even used sound mirrors, concave stone surfaces that focus audio like satellite dishes. At Sacsayhuamán, a ceremonial plaza above Cusco, a clap echoes back milliseconds slower than it should, implying hidden chambers or precisely spaced walls creating delayed reverberation. Archaeoacoustics researchers have recorded these effects and found patterns matching the harmonic scales of Inca music. Imagine standing in a plaza where a single flute note could ripple across the space like a pebble tossed into a pond, its echoes overlapping to create chords no musician actually played. The most haunting acoustic feat, the ghost channels of Machu Picchu. Certain staircases and water channels emit strange, flute-like tones when wind passes through them at specific speeds. These aren't random whistles. Each channel's width and depth corresponds to musical intervals used in Inca ceremonies. Modern experiments with 3D printed replicas prove the tones align with traditional pentatonic scales. Were these the empire's version of wind chimes, turning breezes into sacred symphonies? Or perhaps an early warning system where shifting tones signaled weather changes to farmers below? What modern science confirms is this: the Inca didn't just build for the eye, they composed for the ear. Their structures functioned like instruments, tuned to the frequencies of human speech, ritual music, and environmental sounds. While we blast announcements through electric speakers, they harnessed physics to make stone sing. Stand in these spaces today and you'll hear more than echoes. You'll catch fragments of a lost science where architecture and acoustics fused into something almost magical. Among the most tantalizing mysteries of Inca engineering is how they transported massive stones, some weighing over 100 tons, across treacherous mountain terrain without wheels, draft animals, or even iron tools. While mainstream archaeology credits ingenious techniques like log rollers and inclined planes, some researchers point to indigenous legends that hint at something far more extraordinary: the possibility of anti-gravity technology. Oral traditions speak of shamans who could soften stone with sacred chants or make boulders float into place with the help of celestial beings. Could these stories hold a kernel of truth, or are they simply poetic metaphors for lost construction methods? One compelling clue comes from modern experiments with acoustic levitation. Scientists have demonstrated that high-frequency sound waves can suspend small objects in midair by creating standing waves that counteract gravity. While scaling this effect to multi-ton stones seems implausible today, the Incas' mastery of resonant frequencies evident in their whispering walls and harmonic water channels suggests they understood sound's physical power better than we assumed. Spanish chronicles describe witnessing workers singing to stones during construction, with some blocks allegedly moving as if guided by invisible hands. Skeptics dismiss these accounts as superstition, but physicists note that certain vibrational frequencies can reduce friction or temporarily alter a material's apparent weight. Then there's the enigma of the vitrified stone surfaces found at sites like Sacsayhuamán, where some granite blocks show glass-like patches as if exposed to extreme heat. Alternative theorists propose the Inca might have used focused sound or plant-based chemicals to temporarily liquefy stone, allowing them to mold it like putty before it solidified, a technique that could explain joints so precise they defy conventional tools. In the 1970s, Bolivian researcher Jorge Miranda claimed to have replicated this process using a lost herbal solvent, though his findings were never peer-reviewed. The most radical hypothesis comes from aerospace engineer Dr. John Jenkins, who analyzed stone routes near Ollantaytambo and found peculiar tracks resembling slide marks rather than drag trails. His controversial theory, the Inca might have employed some form of geopolymer, a malleable stone slurry poured into molds on site. While mainstream archaeologists reject this as speculative, it's worth noting that similar debates once surrounded Egypt's pyramids before evidence of poured limestone concrete emerged. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between legend and science. The Inca's shamans spoke of kayak, a sacred force that connected all things, while their builders demonstrated uncanny knowledge of resonance and material properties. Whether through forgotten physics, sonic manipulation, or simply peerless craftsmanship, their achievements continue to challenge our assumptions about ancient technology. The stones remain silent witnesses, leaving us to wonder, did the Inca possess knowledge so advanced we've yet to rediscover it? Nestled in the sacred valley like a colossal stone amphitheater, the concentric terraces of Moray defy simple explanation. These deep, circular depressions, some plunging over 30 meters, aren't just another feat of Inca landscaping. They're believed to be one of history's first agricultural laboratories, a living testbed where the empire's farmers engineered crops capable of surviving extreme climate centuries before modern genetic modification. Each tier acts as a microclimate, with temperature differences of up to 15 degrees Celsius from top to bottom, replicating conditions from coastal deserts to highland plateaus. Walk down these spiraling steps and you're essentially descending through ecological zones, a gradient so precise. Scientists suspect the Inca used it to selectively breed hardy potato and maize varieties that fueled their empire's expansion. What makes Moray extraordinary isn't just its design, but its foresight. Researchers have found that the terrace's orientation maximizes exposure to sunlight while minimizing wind damage, creating stable environments where plants could be gradually acclimated to harsher conditions. The lowest levels, shielded from frost and bathed in warmth, likely nurtured delicate parent strains, while upper terraces subjected descendants to increasing cold and UV exposure. Over generations, this produced cold-resistant potatoes that thrived at altitudes where other crops withered, a feat modern agronomists are only now replicating with expensive climate chambers. The parallels to today's GMO research are startling, where we use gene splicing to insert frost-resistant fish proteins into tomatoes. The Inca achieved similar results through patient observation and selective breeding. Their laboratory required no Petri dishes or CRISPR technology, just an intimate understanding of how plants adapt. Modern tests on indigenous potato varieties traced to Moray show genetic mutations for drought tolerance that mirror traits biotech firms spend millions engineering. Yet Moray's genius extends beyond crop hardening. The site's drainage system, a network of hidden channels beneath each terrace, allowed precise control of water flow, enabling experiments in irrigation efficiency. Archaeologists have even uncovered evidence of soil mixtures tailored to different terraces, suggesting the Inca were manipulating variables like pH and nutrient density long before these concepts had scientific names. The haunting question is how they documented their findings without written records. Some scholars propose the knotted quipu cord stored agricultural data, while others believe knowledge was transmitted through generations of farmer priests who treated plant breeding as sacred science. Either way, their legacy endures in Andean fields where descendants of Morais engineered crops still grow, a living library of resilience that outlasted empires. Today, as climate change threatens global food security, Morais' lessons resonate louder than ever. Scientists from the International Potato Center are reviving Inca techniques to develop stress-resistant crops, proving that sometimes the most advanced solutions aren't found in a lab, but in the quiet wisdom of terraces carved into ancient earth. At first glance, they appear insignificant small stone knobs jutting from massive blocks at sites like Ollantaytambo and Sacsayhuamán. But these unassuming protrusions, called nubs by archaeologists, hide a mystery that has divided experts for decades. Why would the Inca, masters of seamless stonework, leave these rough bumps on otherwise perfectly fitted walls? The theories span the practical to the extraordinary, each offering a glimpse into a technology we're still struggling to comprehend. The simplest explanation suggests these nubs were handles. Workers could have gripped them with ropes or wooden levers to maneuver multi-ton blocks into place. Experimental archaeologists have tested this by replicating the protrusions on smaller stones, finding they do provide leverage when dragging or tilting heavy objects. But skeptics note that many nubs remain on finished walls where no lifting was needed, unless they served a dual purpose as permanent anchor points for roofs or ceremonial decorations. Another camp argues these bumps were alignment markers. Inca stonemasons might have used them as visual guides when positioning irregularly shaped blocks, similar to how modern builders use chalk lines. Laser scans of walls show some nubs cluster along invisible planes, hinting at a sophisticated leveling system. At Coricancha, certain protrusions align with solstice sunbeams, suggesting they could have been part of a larger astronomical grid. Yet this doesn't explain why other nubs appear randomly placed, as if their purpose was temporary rather than structural. Then there's the controversial soft stone theory. Some researchers propose the Inca used plant-based chemicals to temporarily alter the hardness of granite, allowing them to mold it like clay. In this scenario, nubs could have been left as test points to monitor the material's consistency during construction, like a baker checking dough. Spanish chronicles describe indigenous shamans using herbal mixtures to soften stone, and modern experiments with acidic plant extracts have shown limited success in altering rock surfaces. If true, these unassuming bumps might be the fingerprints of a lost alchemical process. The most tantalizing idea comes from acoustic archaeology. At certain sites, striking the nubs produces distinct metallic tones, leading some to speculate they were tuning devices for sonic levitation experiments. While mainstream science dismisses this as fantasy, it's undeniable that the Inca possessed an uncanny understanding of resonance. Could these knobs have been part of a vibrational lifting system where sound waves reduced friction or counteracted gravity? Without written records, we're left with a puzzle carved in stone, one that challenges our assumptions about what ancient builders could achieve. Walk up to one of these nubs today and run your fingers over its weathered surface. You're touching more than a stone, you're feeling the edge of a lost technology, a question mark in rock that continues to baffle engineers. Whether mundane handles or clues to a forgotten science, these protrusions stand as silent witnesses to a civilization that turned impossibility into routine. Beneath the towering walls of Sacsayhuamán, where the stones above tell one story, a hidden network of tunnels whispers another. These subterranean passages, some wide enough for marching soldiers, others so narrow they force crouched progress, sprawl like veins beneath the fortress, yet their purpose remains one of the Incas' most tantalizing mysteries. Were they emergency escape routes for warriors, sacred pathways for rituals, or perhaps part of an intricate water system designed to outwit sieges? Modern expeditions with ground-penetrating radar reveal the tunnels extend farther than previously imagined, branching toward Cusco's heart in patterns that defy simple explanation. Start with the military theory. Spanish chronicles describe Inca defenders vanishing from besieged strongholds only to reappear behind enemy lines, tactics that make sudden sense if secret tunnels connected key positions. Some passages feature carved steps and alcoves perfect for ambushes, while drain-like channels could have doubled as communication ducts. At Chincana, the largest known tunnel, walls bear scorch marks from torches, suggesting regular use. Yet skeptics argue that while the Inca were master strategists, these tunnels lack defensive features like choke points or hidden doors, odd omissions for a culture that perfected fortress design. Then there's the spiritual angle. Many tunnels align with celestial events. During solstices, shafts of sunlight pierce certain chambers like spotlights. Quechua elders speak of Aku Pacha, the underground realm where spirits dwell, and some tunnels lead to natural caves adorned with petroglyphs of serpents and constellations. Archaeologists have uncovered ritual offerings, spondylus shells, gold foil, and mummified guinea pigs placed where tunnels intersect. Could these have been pilgrimage routes, guiding initiates through symbolic journeys akin to modern vision quests? The Inca revered water as sacred, and tunnels funneling natural springs might have blended practical hydraulics with ceremony, which brings us to the water hypothesis. At Sacsayhuamán's base, a stone-lined channel called Sacsayhuamán still redirects underground streams. Some tunnels feature precisely sloped floors that mirror the Inca's surface aqueducts, suggesting a buried twin to their famed water network. During rainy seasons, certain passages transform into gushing conduits, flushing debris with hydraulic efficiency. The kicker, recent drone surveys reveal tunnels linking to Picchu's ceremonial fountains, implying a hidden system that married utility with worship. Perhaps the truth lies in synthesis. Like much Inca engineering, these tunnels likely served multiple purposes. Escape routes doubling as spiritual portals, drainage channels that became processional paths. What's undeniable is their sophistication. Ventilation shafts prevent air stagnation, while clever use of sedimentary layers prevents collapses, techniques modern miners would recognize. Stand where a tunnel mouth yawns into darkness, and you're facing more than a hole in the earth. You're witnessing the Inca's genius for turning landscape into living technology, where every stone held layers of meaning we're only beginning to decode. High above the cloud forests, where morning mist swirls around ancient stones, Machu Picchu reveals its best-kept secret. It's not just a city, but a colossal sundial. Every structure, every staircase, even the placement of individual boulders aligns with celestial precision, transforming the entire mountaintop into a living calendar. During equinoxes, sunlight pierces strategic windows and doorways with laser-like accuracy, casting beams that illuminate sacred stones at precisely calculated angles. This wasn't urban planning, it was architecture fused with astronomy, where streets became sightlines and temples doubled as observatories. Take the Temple of the Sun, where a trapezoidal window frames the June solstice sunrise so precisely that the first rays strike a ceremonial stone at the exact center. Nearby, the Intihuatana stone, often called the hitching post of the sun, casts no shadow at solar noon during equinoxes, a feat requiring knowledge of Earth's axial tilt that European astronomers wouldn't grasp for another century. But the genius doesn't stop with standalone structures. The entire city's layout mirrors celestial patterns, residential sectors aligned with the Pleiades rising, agricultural terraces positioned to maximize growing seasons based on solar angles, and even water channels designed to reflect constellations during specific festivals. What's staggering is the scale of coordination. While other cultures built standalone monuments like Stonehenge to track the heavens, the Inca engineered entire cities as interactive celestial models. At Pisac, another solar-aligned complex, the terraces form a gigantic staircase to the sky, their edges catching the equinox sunrise to create a cascading shadow effect that lasts exactly 12 hours, a functional sundial spanning a mountainside. Modern LiDAR scans reveal even ordinary homes in these cities were deliberately offset by fractions of a degree to account for solar declination, ensuring winter sunlight could warm interiors while summer eves provided shade. The implications rewrite our understanding of pre-Columbian science. Machu Picchu's architects didn't just observe the sun, they conversed with it, using architecture to ask questions about time, seasons, and Earth's place in the cosmos. Their solar alignments weren't static either. Subtle asymmetries in building angles suggest they adjusted for long-term astronomical shifts, compensating for the precession of equinoxes centuries before it was formally documented. Stand in the main plaza at dawn during an equinox, and you'll witness the Inca's mastery firsthand. Shadows slice across courtyards like clock hands, light beams ignite carved symbols in sequence, and the whole city seems to awaken as one organism greeting the sun. It's a reminder that for the Inca, technology wasn't about dominating nature but harmonizing with its deepest rhythms. While we rely on atomic clocks and GPS, they built a civilization where time itself was measured in stone and sunlight. Hidden within tangled strands of colored cords lies what may be the Inca's most perplexing invention, the quipu. These intricate knotted strings, far from mere decorations, functioned as a sophisticated recording system capable of tracking everything from grain stores to celestial cycles. While Spanish conquerors dismissed them as primitive tally ropes, modern researchers are uncovering a shocking truth. These cords may represent one of humanity's earliest forms of binary code, a data storage system woven in wool and cotton centuries before computers existed. Take a close look at a quipu and patterns emerge. Each cord's position, color, knot type, and spin direction carries meaning. A team from Harvard's quipu database project recently demonstrated how certain knot clusters align with census records from Spanish colonial documents, proving these were precise accounting tools. But the real breakthrough came when mathematicians noticed something astonishing. The knots follow a base 10 positional system strikingly similar to how modern computers process numbers, with different knot types representing values from 1 to 9. And their placement along the string indicating ones, tens, or hundreds. Some quipus even appear to use a binary-like system where spun chords represent on/off states, echoing the zeros and ones of digital code. What makes this discovery revolutionary is the implication that the Inca developed a functional writing system without traditional script. While scholars once assumed quipus only recorded numbers, linguists now believe certain configurations may encode narratives, historical events, poetry, even laws. At the University of St. Andrews, researchers using 3D imaging have identified recurring phrase structures in knot clusters that mirror grammatical patterns in Quechua, the Inca language. One tantalizing theory suggests that the chord's colors correspond to semantic categories, with crimson representing warriors or gold threads signaling imperial decrees. The most provocative evidence comes from the Andean village of San Juan de Colata, where elders guard two quipus they claim contain letters between rebel leaders during colonial uprisings. Microscopic analysis reveals these chords incorporate exotic fibers like vicuña hair and bat wool materials likely chosen for their symbolic meaning rather than accounting purposes. When played like a harp, some quipus even emit distinct tones, leading musicologists to speculate they might have been read aloud as sonic poems, yet the full cipher remains just beyond reach. Of the 1,000 known surviving quipus, only about a third have been partially decoded. The rest whisper their secrets in knots we've yet to untangle. Perhaps the deepest lesson lies not in cracking their code, but in recognizing how the Inca redefined what writing could be. Where other cultures pressed ink onto parchment, they wrote knowledge into existence thread by thread, knot by knot, creating a language as fluid and multidimensional as the empire itself. In the flooded terraces of the Andes, where golden stalks of quinoa and maize swayed under the mountain sun, the Inca waged war on crop-devouring insects not with chemicals but with feathery and finned allies. Their secret weapon, ducks and fish deployed as a living pest control system. Picture this, rice paddies doubling as aquaculture farms where ducks paddled between rows, snapping up beetles and larvae, while fish darted below the surface, feasting on mosquito eggs and algae. This wasn't just farming, it was a self-sustaining ecosystem engineered with the precision of a Swiss watch. The brilliance lay in its simplicity. Unlike modern monocultures that rely on pesticides, which often wipe out beneficial insects along with pests, the Incas' approach was surgical. By introducing domesticated Muscovy ducks to their fields, they capitalized on the birds' voracious appetite for insects. Spanish chroniclers recorded seeing ducks herded like tiny agricultural armies, their webbed feet stirring nutrients into the water as they worked. Meanwhile, native fish like the Andean catfish Trichomicterus patrolled submerged roots, their constant nibbling preventing infestations that could devastate crops. Farmers even timed planting cycles to coincide with fish spawning seasons, ensuring a fresh generation of pest controllers with each growing cycle. But this system offered bonuses beyond bug control. Duck droppings fertilized the water, boosting plankton that fed the fish, who in turn enriched the soil with their waste. The Inca essentially hacked the nitrogen cycle centuries before chemists understood it. Modern studies of similar systems in Asia where ducks are still used in rice paddies show they can reduce pesticide use by up to 100% while increasing yields. The Inca didn't just avoid toxins, they turned pests into protein, harvesting both fish and ducks as additional food sources. A single terrace could produce grains, waterfowl, and fish simultaneously, a trifecta of productivity modern permaculturists strive to replicate. What's truly remarkable is how they scaled this technique. Terraces from the Sacred Valley to Lake Titicaca show evidence of integrated channels connecting fields to waterways, allowing fish to migrate between plots. At Moray's experimental terraces, archaeologists found duck bones alongside tools for maintaining fish ladders, proof these methods were refined through trial and error. While European farmers of the same era battled crop losses with superstition and prayer, the Inca engineered solutions that worked with nature's rhythms. The lesson for our pesticide-dependent world, their system wasn't just chemical-free, it was regenerative. No dead zones, no resistant superbugs, just a closed loop where every player, from duck to fish to crop, had a role. As modern agriculture grapples with collapsing bee populations and toxic runoff, these ancient fields whisper an alternative. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't invented in a lab, but hatched in a nest by the water's edge. Perched on a knife-edge ridge 2,000 meters above the Apurimac River, the ruins of Choqquequirau defy both gravity and logic. This cradle of gold, often called Machu Picchu's sister city, clings to slopes so steep that modern engineers would need dynamite and steel reinforcements to attempt such construction. Yet the Inca didn't just build here, they thrived, transforming sheer cliffs into multi-tiered palaces and temples with a mastery of vertical architecture that still stuns today. Their secret, a triple-layered approach to stability that turned precarious mountainsides into unshakable foundations. Start with the retaining walls, not just barriers but active structural participants. At Choqquequirau, terraces step down the mountainside like a giant staircase, each supported by walls built with a slight inward tilt. This subtle angle, usually between 5 and 15 degrees, causes the weight of the earth behind them to press the stones tighter together during seismic activity. Modern geotechnical studies show this design creates what engineers call gravity walls, structures that actually strengthen under pressure. The Inca enhanced this effect by filling terrace beds with layers of crushed rock for drainage, topped with fertile soil that acted like a living glue, its root systems weaving through the substrate to create a natural reinforcement mesh. But walls alone couldn't conquer these slopes. The real genius lies in the invisible infrastructure, the subterranean network of drainage channels that snake beneath every terrace. Unlike modern builders who fight water with concrete and pipes, the Inca channeled it strategically. During heavy rains, water would seep through the porous topsoil, hit the drainage layer below, and get funneled into stone-lined canals that redirected it harmlessly down the mountainside. This kept the soil moist but never waterlogged, preventing the landslides that plague contemporary hillside developments. Archaeologists have found some channels equipped with clever flow control features, stone baffles to slow torrents during storms, and spiral drop structures that dissipated erosive energy as water descended. The crowning touch, adaptive foundations. At Choqquequirau's Temple of the Sun, builders anchored the structure to bedrock using a technique called keying. They'd carved the foundation stones to match the mountain's natural contours, effectively locking the building into the mountain itself. In softer areas, they drove long stone piles, essentially ancient pilings, deep into the earth until hitting stable strata. Laser scans reveal some structures actually molded around large boulders rather than removing them, turning geological obstacles into load-bearing assets. What's truly humbling is how these methods outperform modern counterparts. When a 7.8 magnitude quake struck Peru in 2007, modern buildings in nearby Cusco collapsed while 600-year-old Inca terraces at Choqquequirau didn't even shift. Contemporary slope stabilization often relies on steel-reinforced concrete and deep chemical injections, expensive, environmentally harsh solutions. The Inca achieved better results by listening to the land, using materials at hand, and thinking in centuries rather than decades. Their vertical cities weren't just built on mountains, they became part of them. Stone and peak fused into a single, indomitable entity. Stand on Choqquequirau's highest terrace today, and you'll grasp the full audacity of their vision. Below you, the Apurimac roars through its canyon. Above, condors wheel against endless sky. The city seems to grow from the cliff itself, its walls breathing with the mountain's rhythms. It's a visceral reminder that for the Inca, architecture wasn't about conquering nature, but becoming its ally, crafting spaces where human ambition and geological forces found perfect equilibrium. High in the Andes, where volcanic heat meets glacial runoff, the Inca engineered a wellness technology that predated modern spa science by centuries, their therapeutic hot-cold bath systems. At sites like Machu Picchu's Temple of the Sun, archaeologists uncovered stone channels that precisely blended steaming geothermal waters with icy mountain streams, creating temperature-controlled pools for healing and ritual. This wasn't just primitive bathing, it was hydrotherapy mastered to an art form, with gradients of heat and cold tailored to treat everything from battle wounds to spiritual ailments. The sophistication begins with the sourcing. The Inca mapped hydrothermal vents with astonishing accuracy, channeling mineral-rich waters through carved stone conduits that maintained heat over long distances. At the Baños del Inca in Cajamarca, a flagship thermal complex, engineers designed separate inflow systems for hot and cold water, allowing attendants to adjust mixes with stone sluice gates. Spanish chroniclers described nobles reclining in tiered pools where temperatures decreased, gradually starting at scorching levels for detoxification, transitioning to tepid for relaxation, and culminating in bracing cold plunges to stimulate circulation. Modern physiotherapists recognize this sequence as a proto-version of contrast hydrotherapy, now used to treat inflammation and muscle recovery. But the real genius lay in their understanding of minerals. The Inca selectively routed waters through different types of stone to infuse them with therapeutic elements. Volcanic basalt channels added sulfur for skin conditions, while limestone passages boosted calcium content for bone healing. At Tinajani near Puno, bathers still soak in naturally iron-enriched pools the Inca used for anemia treatments, a practice modern medicine only validated in the 20th century. Some sacred baths even incorporated herbs like Muña Andean mint, whose antiseptic properties enhanced the water's healing effects. The spiritual dimension was equally advanced. Ritual baths at Ollantaytambo aligned with solstice sunrises, where priests timed immersion to celestial events, believing the waters absorbed cosmic energy. Cold plunges symbolized purification, entering the icy flow, represented shedding earthly burdens, while hot springs facilitated communion with ancestral spirits. This duality mirrored the Inca cosmos itself, where opposing forces like hot and cold Yunu and Siechaki weren't enemies but complementary energies needing balance. What's striking is how these baths doubled as social equalizers. While European thermal springs of the same era served only elites, Inca complexes had designated areas for warriors, farmers, and even livestock, recognizing communal wellness as foundational to empire. Modern researchers studying the ruins of Turin's baths found evidence of a triage system where water temperatures were calibrated to specific injuries, suggesting an early form of medical specialization. Today, as biohackers rediscover contrast therapy and luxury spas charge hundreds for mineral baths, these ancient stone channels still flow with the same healing waters. The Inca didn't just stumble upon hot springs, they engineered them into a holistic health system where body, land, and spirit converged in steaming, sacred pools. Stand knee-deep in one today, and you're not just soaking in warmth, you're bathing in a technology that understood wellness isn't just about curing illness, but harmonizing with the very elements that sustain life. While most ancient civilizations measured wealth in gold or grain, the Inca counted theirs in soft, humming alpacas and plump, chirping guinea pigs. These weren't just livestock. They were living technologies sculpted through centuries of selective breeding into perfect Andean survival machines. Picture this: herds of alpacas grazing at altitudes where oxygen is so thin, most animals would suffocate, their super-dense wool providing warmth so efficient it outperforms modern synthetic fabrics. Meanwhile, in clay-walled kitchens, guinea pigs scurried underfoot, not as pets but as self-replenishing protein factories that turned vegetable scraps into gourmet meat. This was animal husbandry elevated to an art form, where every trait served a purpose in the empire's grand design. Start with the alpaca, the Incas' answer to extreme elevation agriculture. Through generations of meticulous breeding, they transformed their wild vicuña ancestors into walking multi-tools. Their wool contains microscopic air pockets that trap heat more effectively than sheep's wool, yet is lightweight enough for mountain travel. Spanish records describe Inca herders categorizing alpacas by fleece type, some bred for silky fiber coveted by nobles, others for rugged coats ideal for soldiers' cloaks. Modern DNA analysis reveals they even developed regional varieties, high-altitude strains with enlarged lungs and hemoglobin adaptations, while valley-dwelling alpacas were optimized for meat production. Unlike European livestock that required pastures, these animals thrived on tough iku grass, converting sparse vegetation into usable resources with near miraculous efficiency. Then there's the guinea pig, perhaps history's most underrated domesticated animal. The Inca didn't just farm them, they engineered different breeds for specific roles. Some lineages were barrel-chested for maximum meat yield, able to reach slaughter weight in just 8 weeks. Others had longer fur for textile use, or particularly docile temperaments for ceremonial purposes. Archaeologists have uncovered dedicated Kai guinea pig kitchens in Machu Picchu, complete with stone feeding troughs and drainage systems for easy cleaning. What's genius is their zero-waste integration into households. Women would keep dozens beneath their beds where the animals feasted on food scraps while their body heat helped warm homes during frigid nights. Spanish chronicler Garcilaso de la Vega marveled at how Inca families could host feasts simply by harvesting a few from their in-house larders. The real breakthrough was their breeding calendars. Inca herders synchronized alpaca reproduction with seasonal rainfall patterns, ensuring newborns arrived when mountain grasses were most abundant. They practiced rotational grazing across vast networks of terraced pastures, preventing overgrazing centuries before modern ecology existed. Guinea pig lineages were strategically crossbred between communities to maintain genetic diversity, an early form of seed exchange applied to livestock. Modern experiments confirm their methods were astonishingly precise. When researchers tried raising European sheep breeds using Inca-style high-altitude management, the animals failed to thrive while alpacas under the same conditions flourished. What modern ranchers are only now rediscovering is the elegance of this system. While industrial agriculture separates animals from crops, the Inca wove them together. Alpaca manure fertilized terraced fields, whose harvests fed guinea pigs, whose waste in turn nourished kitchen gardens. This closed-loop efficiency allowed the empire to support millions without deforestation or overgrazing. Today, as climate change threatens global food systems, Andean farmers still rely on these ancient breeds, proof that the Inca didn't just domesticate animals. They co-evolved with them, creating a partnership where human survival and animal adaptation became one seamless dance. Visit a highland village today, and you'll see the legacy in every fuzzy alpaca silhouette and hear it in the contented squeaks of Kai scurrying under wooden stools. These creatures aren't relics, they're living lessons in how to thrive within nature's limits, written in wool and whiskers long before the word sustainability existed. Among the most baffling remnants of Inca craftsmanship are their mirror-polished stone surfaces, granite slabs so flawlessly smooth they reflect like glass. At the Coricancha Temple in Cusco, where walls once shimmered with gold, surviving stone foundations reveal a different kind of brilliance, surfaces honed to a finish that would require diamond-tipped tools today. Modern engineers have run their fingers along these stones and felt nothing, no grooves, no tool marks, just cold perfection defying 5 centuries of weathering. How did a civilization without hardened steel achieve a luster that modern lapidaries struggle to replicate? The mystery deepens when you consider the material. Granite, one of Earth's hardest stones, ranks just below diamonds on the Mohs scale. Contemporary stoneworkers use abrasive pastes with industrial diamonds or silicon carbide to polish it, yet the Inca left no evidence of such compounds. One theory points to an ingenious multi-stage process. Artisans may have started with coarse sanding using quartz-rich river stones, nature's own abrasive, then progressed through progressively finer grits, possibly crushed garnet or emery. Spanish chronicles mention a plant called Sacsayhuamán, whose acidic sap allegedly softened stone temporarily, allowing artisans to burnish surfaces with smooth pebbles. Modern experiments show certain Andean plants contain oxalic acid, which can create a chemical-mechanical polishing effect on granite when combined with friction. But the real enigma is the final stage. Some surfaces at Ollantaytambo exhibit optical flatness deviations less than 1/1000th of an inch across spans of several feet. Achieving this manually seems impossible without guided tools. Archaeoengineers from the University of California proposed the Inca might have used polishing sleds, wooden frames holding flat stones, pulled back and forth with ropes while abrasive slurries did the work. Laser scans of certain slabs reveal microscopic striations following perfect arcs, supporting this theory. Others suggest they employed vibration techniques, perhaps with tuned drums or resonant stones, to evenly distribute polishing pressure. The most provocative clue comes from unfinished blocks at Rumacolca Quarry. Some display partial polishing that transitions abruptly from rough to glossy, as if treated with a localized method. X-ray fluorescence tests detected traces of tin and lead on these surfaces metals that, when combined with certain plant acids, can create temporary chemical polishing agents. This aligns with indigenous legends of La Masca, a lost paste that made stone glow under moonlight. What modern stonemasons find humbling is the time investment. Recreating a hand-sized polished patch with primitive methods takes weeks. Scaling that to entire temples represents a staggering commitment. Yet the Inca didn't just polish flat surfaces. They achieved this finish on curved walls and intricate carvings where modern rotary tools would struggle. Their mastery suggests a tradition refined over generations, where apprentices learned to feel imperfections fingertips couldn't detect. Stand in the Coricancha's courtyard at dawn, and you'll see why this wasn't mere vanity. As sunlight kisses those ancient stones, they don't just reflect light, they seem to drink it, glowing from within. The Inca understood stone as a living canvas, its polish not just a technical feat but a spiritual act, transforming brute rock into a conduit for the divine. Today's engineers can measure the smoothness, but the true brilliance lies in the hands that made mountains shimmer like still water. The Inca didn't just build roads, they weaponized them. Picture an invading army climbing steep Andean trails, only to find the path ahead abruptly vanishing into a sheer cliff, replaced by a dangling grass bridge swaying over a chasm. This wasn't poor engineering, it was psychological warfare etched into the landscape. Their road network, the Cuhapacñan, wasn't merely functional. It was a strategic maze designed to disorient and demoralize enemies long before battle began. Take the approach to Sacsayhuamán, the fortress guarding Cusco. Invaders ascending the zigzagging ramps would suddenly confront three towering walls stacked like jagged teeth, each stone block weighing more than 100 tons. The architecture itself screamed impossibility. How could humans assemble such monoliths without divine intervention? Spanish chroniclers described conquistadors freezing in terror at the sight, convinced the cyclopean walls were the work of giants. The layout amplified this dread. Narrow entrances funneled attackers into kill zones where they could be pelted with boulders from hidden platforms above. Even the acoustics played a role. Whispered commands from defenders echoed unnaturally off the angled walls, creating the eerie illusion that the stones themselves were shouting orders. But the real mastery lay in manipulating visibility. Inca roads often vanished around mountain bends, only to reappear impossibly high on distant cliffs, making their armies seem omnipresent. Relay stations perched on peaks allowed signal fires to transmit messages across hundreds of miles in hours, meaning defenders could summon reinforcements faster than invaders could navigate the terrain. Enemy scouts might spot a distant fortress at dawn, only to find it abandoned by midday, its troops having moved unseen through tunnels to flank them. The Spanish recorded instances where entire Inca battalions seemed to materialize from solid rock, thanks to camouflaged staircases and underground passages. Then there were the ghost tactics. At Ollantaytambo, engineers built false trails leading to dead-end cliffs, while real paths remained hidden behind waterfalls or beneath terraces. Invaders would exhaust themselves climbing, only to discover they'd been herded into traps. The Inca even harnessed natural elements as psychological tools, strategically timed rock slides, diverted rivers that stranded enemies, and terraces that reflected sunlight to create blinding glare during key battle hours. What modern military strategists find most impressive is how these designs exploited universal human fears: heights, enclosure, the unknown. Unlike European castles that relied on brute strength, Inca fortresses played mind games. A single narrow bridge across a roaring gorge became more effective than 1,000 soldiers because the real weapon wasn't the blade, but the paralyzing doubt seeded in every enemy heart. If they can build this, what else are they capable of? Stand in the ruins today and you can still feel the genius at work. The terraces aren't just walls, they're optical illusions, appearing taller from below to intimidate, shorter from above to lure attackers in. The staircases aren't mere steps, they're psychological gauges. They're irregular heights forcing invaders to stumble, breaking their rhythm and confidence. This was defense not just of stone but of perception, where every curve and shadow whispered to would-be conquerors, "Turn back, you do not belong here." The land itself had become a soldier, and the Inca its unseen generals. While European monks tracked hours with candle clocks and sandy hourglasses, the Inca were engineering timekeeping devices of staggering precision without gears or glass. High atop sacred peaks like Huanacora, carved stone pillars called sucancas cast shadows that sliced across calibrated platforms, marking not just hours but solstices, equinoxes, and even the 18-month agricultural cycles unique to the Andes. These weren't crude sundials, they were megalithic calendars synced to celestial events with a margin of error under 30 minutes annually. At Coricancha's solar observatory, a polished gold plate positioned at a precise angle would catch the winter solstice sunrise, igniting like a beacon to signal the year's turning, a feat requiring knowledge of Earth's axial tilt that wouldn't reach Europe for another century. But the real marvel was their mastery of water clocks or pactures. Unlike simple clepsydras that merely dripped water, Inca hydrologists engineered tiered stone basins where cascading streams triggered acoustic signals. At Tepon's ceremonial fountains, channels divided water flows into measured pulses, faster streams for short intervals, slower trickles tracking longer periods. Spanish chronicler Bernabé Cobo described priests using these systems to time overnight rituals to the minute, with specific tones echoing as certain basins filled. Modern tests reveal some pactures could measure 23-minute increments with 95% accuracy, rivaling medieval European devices 3 times their size. What set Inca timekeeping apart was its fusion of utility and cosmology. Their days weren't rigid 24-hour blocks but flexible units tied to solar zeniths, allowing seasonal adjustments modern clocks lack. At Machu Picchu's Torreon Tower, a slit in the stone wall projects a dagger of light that marches across carved markers, speed up in December's summer solstice, slow in June's winter, creating a living almanac. Nearby, cylindrical intihuatanas served as multi-functional gnomons. Their shadows indicated time, while shadowless moments during equinoxes signaled planting seasons. The most ingenious adaptation might be their portable quipu-based calendars. Certain knotted cords encoded not just quantities but temporal data, knot spacing representing days between festivals, colored strings marking lunar phases. Researchers at the University of St. Andrews recently decoded a quipu that perfectly matches the Inca's 18-month fiscal cycle, proving these were more than accounting tools. They were 3-dimensional spreadsheets of time itself. Stand before a sucanca at dawn, and you'll witness the genius firsthand. As sunlight kisses the pillar's edge, the shadow doesn't just move, it dances across centuries of astronomical observation etched in stone. The Inca didn't just track time, they orchestrated it, turning mountains into clocks and water into chimes, crafting a temporal symphony where every drop and shadow whispered the universe's rhythm. While Europe obsessed with mechanizing hours, the Inca embraced time as a living force not to be conquered but harmonized with. Stretching across Peru's arid plains, the Nazca lines remain one of the world's most mesmerizing mysteries, colossal geoglyphs so vast they can only be fully appreciated from the sky. While these sprawling designs predate the Inca by centuries, they planted the seeds of an engineering philosophy that would define Andean civilization, the transformation of landscapes into living canvases. The Inca didn't just inherit this tradition, they elevated it, scaling geoglyphic thinking from desert etchings to mountain-carved empires. Consider how the Nazca artists worked. Without aerial views or advanced tools, they removed tons of iron oxide-coated pebbles to reveal lighter subsoil, creating stark contrasts visible from great heights. This precise manipulation of surface layers finds echoes in Inca terrace systems, where engineers similarly drew on mountainsides by stripping and rearranging earth to control erosion and microclimates. Both cultures shared a radical vision, seeing land not as something to occupy, but as a medium to sculpt. Where Nazca created art, the Inca built functionality, yet both stemmed from the same profound understanding of geoglyphic principles: intentional alteration of terrain to communicate with gods, control nature, and mark territory. The Inca took this further by integrating geoglyphic elements into sacred architecture. At Sacsayhuamán, the zigzagging walls mirror the geometric precision of Nazca's trapezoids, but on a defensive scale. The entire fortress forms a giant stone glyph visible from Cusco below, its jagged teeth symbolizing lightning, a divine claim etched in rock. Similarly, the spiraling terraces at Moray aren't just agricultural labs. They're concentric earthworks functioning as both crop nurseries and ceremonial symbols of the Inca cosmos. Modern LiDAR scans reveal how these sites align with astronomical events. Just as Nazca lines track solstices and constellations, perhaps the most striking parallel lies in scale. The Nazca hummingbird spans 300 feet, but Inca projects like the Cusco puma, a city shaped like a crouching feline with Sacsayhuamán as its head stretched over miles. Both cultures manipulated perception through proportion. Nazca's spider and condor glyphs use optical illusions to appear proportionate only from specific vantage points, much like Inca trapezoidal doors and windows, which seem perfectly square when viewed along ceremonial sightlines. This wasn't coincidence, it was a shared design language bending space to sacred geometry. Yet the Inca added an innovation Nazca never could: interactivity. Their geoglyphs weren't just to be seen, they were to be walked. The Sec system, a network of ritual pathways radiating from Cusco, turned the entire valley into a pilgrimage glyph, with each line connecting shrines and landmarks like a spiritual circuit board. Participants didn't merely observe these designs, they became moving parts within them, activating the landscape's sacred energy through motion. Nazca's glyphs whispered to the gods from afar, the Incas shouted through footfalls and offerings. The legacy endures. Modern Peruvian farmers still use ancient geoglyphic techniques, stacking dark stones to absorb heat for early potato growth, or arranging lighter rocks to divert frost, proving these weren't just artistic or imperial statements, but living technologies. From Nazca's desert etchings to the Incas' breathing terraces, these cultures remind us that engineering isn't always about building up. Sometimes the most profound statements are made by scraping away, revealing the Earth's hidden potential one calculated stroke at a time. Stand on a mountainside above Cusco at dawn and watch how shadows animate the land's carved contours. You're not just seeing history, you're standing inside a civilization's signature written across the skin of the Andes. At Pisac, where terraces climb the mountains like giant staircases to the sky, the Inca didn't start from scratch. They built atop the bones of a far older civilization. The very stones beneath their feet once belonged to the Kilk people who occupied this land centuries earlier. But here's what stuns archaeologists. Rather than demolishing these ruins, the Inca engineers studied them, then upgraded them with near-surgical precision. They didn't just recycle materials, they reverse-engineered weaknesses in the original structures and transformed them into something indestructible. Take the fortress walls. The Kilk had built with rough, irregular stones packed with clay mortar, functional but vulnerable to earthquakes. When the Inca took over, they stripped away the weaker mortar, then fitted new blocks using their signature polygonal masonry, interlocking each piece so tightly that the entire wall became a unified shock absorber. Modern scans reveal something remarkable. The Inca left certain Kilk foundation stones untouched, recognizing their stability, but replaced every vulnerable joint with their own earthquake-proof designs. It's like finding an ancient car frame and retrofitting it with modern suspension, honoring the original while making it exponentially more resilient. This wasn't just pragmatism, it was a philosophy. Across the empire, from Ollantaytambo to Rakchai, the Inca repurposed older structures with startling efficiency. At the Temple of Viracocha, they incorporated existing megalithic doorways into new ceremonial complexes, aligning them with solstice sunrises the original builders hadn't calculated. In the Sacred Valley, they converted pre-Inca irrigation canals into subterranean segments of their own aqueduct systems, hiding vital infrastructure beneath layers of history. Even their legendary road network often followed ancient trade routes but with critical upgrades. Where older cultures had simple dirt paths, the Inca added drainage channels, retaining walls and staircases, turning precarious trails into engineering masterpieces. The brilliance lay in their forensic approach. Before rebuilding, Inca engineers seemed to diagnose why earlier structures failed. At the Kilk site of Chopuquio, they noticed settlement cracks in old walls caused by uneven soil, so they dug deeper foundations and added gravel layers for drainage before constructing anew. When repurposing Wari-era storehouses, they improved ventilation by designing raised floors and air ducts, preserving food longer than the original builders ever managed. This wasn't mere imitation, it was architectural evolution where every reused stone came with an innovation. What's truly humbling is the scale of their humility. The Inca, despite their engineering supremacy, never assumed they had nothing to learn from predecessors. They studied the Kilk's crop rotations at Pisac, then enhanced them with their terrace microclimates. They adopted ancient metallurgical techniques from the Chimu, then refined them into their legendary Tumbaga alloy. Even their famed Quipu knot records may have roots in earlier Andean accounting systems. This willingness to repurpose and improve rather than destroy and dominate helped them build an empire that thrived where others had struggled. Stand among Pisac's blended walls today, and you can still see the seams where old meets new, Kilk stones with their rounded edges snug against Inca polygons, two civilizations fused into something greater than either could achieve alone. It's a silent testament to an engineering ethos we've only recently rediscovered. Sustainability isn't just about materials but memory, the wisdom to see value in what came before, and the vision to make it endure. In the shadowed valleys of the Andes, where jaguars prowled and enemies lurked, the Inca turned nature's quietest killers into weapons of terrifying precision. Their warriors didn't just arm themselves with spears and arrows, they dipped them in toxins so potent a single scratch could paralyze a grown man in minutes. This wasn't mere hunting, it was early chemical warfare, harnessing the deadliest plants of the Amazon and highlands to create weapons that struck fear into the hearts of invaders. The recipes for these poisons were guarded like state secrets. Warriors harvested curare from jungle vines, a muscle-paralyzing compound that prevented breathing by blocking nerve signals. Mixed with fermented chicha beer to activate its toxicity, a single arrowhead coated in this concoction could drop a Spanish conquistador's horse mid-charge. Even more feared was the venom of the Amazonian poison dart frog captured alive, then held over flames to secrete toxins from its skin, producing a substance so lethal that 1 milligram could kill 10 men. The Inca didn't just use these poisons, they weaponized biodiversity itself, classifying plants by their effects. Some caused agonizing convulsions, while others induced sleep so deep victims were presumed dead. What made their approach revolutionary was the delivery system. Unlike European archers who relied on brute force, Inca hunters developed blowguns from lightweight chonta palm, weapons that could silently deliver poison darts with pinpoint accuracy up to 30 meters away. Spanish chronicler Pedro Cieza de Leon described warriors who could hit a hummingbird in flight, their darts tipped with a paste of crushed ants and toxic berries that caused targets to collapse in seconds. For close combat, they smeared spear points with a paste made from the Sanga de Grotto tree, a crimson sap that prevented blood clotting, turning minor wounds into fatal bleed-outs. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical. Enemy armies would find scouts dead with no visible trauma, their bodies rigid with strange smiles, a telltale sign of strychnine-like toxins from the Andean toxico tree. Warriors soon learned to fear even the slightest scratch, knowing death might come slow and silent. But the Inca didn't stop at organic poisons. They engineered composite toxins by mixing different plant extracts to counteract potential antidotes. Some formulations combined curare, which paralyzes, with belladonna alkaloids, which cause hallucinations, leaving victims conscious but trapped in waking nightmares as their bodies failed. Modern forensic analysis of excavated weapons reveals their terrifying sophistication. Archaeologists at San Marcos University tested arrowheads from an Inca battlefield and detected traces of at least 5 different plant toxins, evidence of a standardized pharmacy of poisons tailored for different scenarios. A dart meant for hunting might use milder toxins to preserve edible meat, while weapons designed for war carried cocktails optimized for maximum suffering. Even more chilling, the Inca developed antidotes for their own elite warriors, chewing coca leaves laced with unknown herbs that appeared to neutralize certain poisons, a form of early immunotherapy lost to colonial destruction. The legacy of these weapons lingers in modern medicine. The same curare that once coated Inca arrows became the foundation for modern muscle relaxants used in surgery. Poison dart frog toxins now inspire painkillers 100 times stronger than morphine without addiction risks. Yet what today's scientists are only beginning to replicate, the Inca perfected through generations of trial and observation, turning the rainforest's deadliest secrets into tools of survival and conquest. Walk through the Amazon now, and you might brush against a vine the Inca once milked for death, now studied for life-saving potential. The line between poison and medicine, terror and triumph, was a boundary they understood better than any civilization of their time. Their true innovation wasn't just in crafting lethal weapons, but in seeing the natural world as a living laboratory, where every leaf, frog, and berry held the power to defend an empire. Amid the shimmering expanse of Lake Titicaca, where the thin air turns sunlight into liquid gold, the Yoro's people walk on water, or so it seems. Their floating islands, woven entirely from golden totora reeds, bob gently on the world's highest navigable lake, a living legacy of Inca-era engineering that defies every modern notion of habitation. These aren't just rafts, they're self-renewing ecosystems where homes, boats, and even the very ground beneath their feet sprout from the same waterlogged reeds. The genius lies in the layers. Fresh totora stalks are lashed together over buoyant root masses called kili, creating a spongy mat thick enough to support entire villages. As the lower layers rot, a process slowed by the lake's cold, oxygen-poor waters, new reeds are added above, making the islands literally grow from their own decay. It's architecture that breathes, a technology as alive as the people who maintain it. The Inca didn't invent these islands, but they perfected them. Recognizing their strategic value, the empire integrated the Yoro's floating communities into their vast infrastructure, using them as mobile trading posts and defensive outposts. Unlike static coastal settlements vulnerable to raids, the islands could be untethered and relocated, a feature the Inca exploited during conflicts. Spanish chronicles describe entire floating villages vanishing overnight, only to reappear in hidden coves. But the real innovation was in scale. Under Inca influence, the Yoros expanded their islands from simple fishing platforms to sprawling complexes with watchtowers and storage huts, all buoyed by ingenious reed bundles arranged in honeycomb patterns for maximum stability. Modern engineers have calculated that some historical islands could support up to 30 tons, equivalent to 50 adults, without sinking more than a few inches into the water. What's often overlooked is the island's microecological brilliance. Totora reeds aren't just construction material, they're a full-service survival system. The Yoros harvest the shoots for food. Their white bases taste like sweet celery, while the fibrous stalks become everything from mattresses to medicine. The pith treats bruises and sunburn. Hollow reed stems are bundled into fishing rafts so lightweight, children can drag them ashore, yet sturdy enough to haul netfuls of karachi fish. Even wastewater is recycled. Urine seeping through the reeds fertilizes new growth, while solid waste is composted in reed-lined pits onshore, completing a closed-loop system that's left Lake Titicaca pristine for centuries. The most breathtaking adaptation these islands learn. Each generation refines the weaving techniques based on storms survived. After particularly violent winds, elders adjust the anchoring systems, sometimes weighting corners with stones, other times adding flexible, breakaway tethers that prevent catastrophic damage. During El Niño years, when warmer waters accelerate reed decay, builders compensate by thickening the Kili base. Modern floating cities like Amsterdam's harbor developments still struggle with such dynamic maintenance, yet the Euros have managed it for 600 years with no blueprints, just oral tradition and fingertips attuned to the reed's slightest tremors. Stand on one of these islands at dawn, and you'll feel the ground sway like a living thing. The reeds sigh underfoot, releasing a fresh, grassy scent as the first sunlight sets the golden surface glowing. It's a reminder that sustainability isn't just about materials, it's a rhythm, a dialogue between human hands and the pulse of the natural world. While we engineer skyscrapers from steel and concrete, the Euros still craft their world from the lake itself, weaving a technology that floats not just on water, but on centuries of unbroken wisdom. Hidden in the bones of every modern alpaca and llama lies a genetic blueprint shaped by the Inca's most patient experiment, centuries of selective breeding so precise, it rivals today's CRISPR technology. While we manipulate genes in labs, the Inca engineered their camelids through generations of meticulous observation, transforming wild vicuñas and guanacos into living tools perfectly adapted to the Andes extremes. Their secret wasn't just choosing the strongest or woolliest animals, it was decoding the land's harsh language and breeding creatures that could whisper back to it. Take the ultra-dense wool of the alpaca. By selecting animals with progressively finer fleeces over generations, the Inca essentially hacked the fibroblast growth factor genes responsible for hair follicle development long before DNA was discovered. Modern genomic studies show their alpacas carried mutations in the KRTAP family of keratin proteins, resulting in fibers with microscopic air pockets that trap heat more efficiently than synthetic insulation. But the real masterstroke was regional specialization. In the bone-chilling heights of Puno, they bred alpacas for long, silky fleeces with hollow cores, natural thermal tubing. Meanwhile, in lower valleys like Urubamba, lineages prioritized muscle density for meat, their genomes enriched for fast-twitch muscle fibers. Spanish tax records reveal the empire maintained distinct herds for nobility, soldiers, and temples, each genetically tuned for specific roles, a stratified breeding program that would make modern ranchers blush. The llamas tell an even wilder story. Where their wild guanaco ancestors were skittish and lean, Inca-bred llamas evolved calmer temperaments and stronger backs perfect for caravan duty. Recent studies pinpoint a mutation in their serotonin transporter genes linked to docility, suggesting the Inca inadvertently conducted history's longest behavioral genetics experiment. But transport was just the beginning. At high-altitude mines like Potosi, archaeologists have uncovered llama skeletons with enlarged hearts and lungs adaptations to hypoxia that mirror those of Tibetan Sherpas. These weren't accidents, they were calculated responses to environmental pressure. The Inca selectively bred pack animals capable of hauling silver ore at elevations where European mules collapsed from altitude sickness. The most tantalizing evidence comes from quippers, those knotted cords that may have recorded more than numbers. Some complex kippers show repeating color sequences that University of California researchers propose could represent breeding lines, with knots indicating desirable traits like wool color or load capacity. Imagine a three-dimensional livestock registry woven in wool and decoded by professional breeders called lamayocks. These experts didn't just count animals, they orchestrated controlled pairings across vast distances, using the empire's road network to transport prime males between valleys, an ancient version of artificial insemination logistics. What modern geneticists find humbling is the scale of their data collection. Without microscopes or DNA sequencers, the Inca tracked hereditary traits across generations through sheer observation. A llama's ability to navigate icy passes or an alpaca's resistance to parasitic hemonchous worms became living spreadsheets of genetic potential. Recent excavations at Tambo, Colorado revealed clay figurines of camelids with exaggerated traits, early blueprints for ideal breeding stock. Meanwhile, stone carvings at Rakchai depict llamas with distinct hump shapes, likely representing prized bloodlines. The legacy survives in today's Andean herds. Genomic analysis shows modern alpacas retain clusters of Inca-era mutations for traits like copper metabolism, critical for surviving the mineral-rich highlands, while European-introduced breeds lack these adaptations. Scientists at the International Livestock Research Institute are now reviving these ancient breeding logs to develop climate-resilient stock, proving that the Inca's woolly biotechnology remains cutting-edge. Stand beside an alpaca in Puno today, and you're not just looking at livestock, you're seeing a living algorithm, refined over centuries to convert sparse Andean grass into warmth, food, and mobility. While we edit genes in Petri dishes, the Inca wrote their code in hoofprints and fleece, proving that nature's most powerful technology is patience itself. Beneath the scorching Andean sun, where modern refrigerators would wilt under the strain, the Inca engineered nature's own cold storage, subterranean chambers so precisely designed they could keep potatoes fresh for years. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were thermodynamic marvels called colcas, where temperature, humidity, and airflow danced in perfect balance without a single watt of electricity. Picture this: workers would dig deep pits into hillsides where the Earth's natural insulation held steady at around 45 degrees Fahrenheit, then line them with alternating layers of straw, gravel, and clay to create a thermal labyrinth. At the heart of these chambers, produce like potatoes and chuño were stacked in breathable reed baskets, allowing cool mountain air to circulate through hidden ventilation shafts carved at angles that harnessed the prevailing winds. The genius wasn't just in construction, it was in location. The Inca positioned these colcas near high-altitude lakes or glacial runoff, where evaporation chilled the air before it entered storage tunnels. In the Cotopaxi region, archaeologists unearthed a complex where underground channels diverted icy meltwater beneath food vaults, creating a primitive heat exchange system. Spanish tax records from the 1500s noted warehouses stocked with enough food to feed tens of thousands for years, all preserved without salt or smoke. Modern tests reveal why. The pit's humidity hovered at 90%, preventing dehydration, while the oxygen-starved environment slowed bacterial growth to a crawl. But the real breakthrough was scalability. At Huánuco Pampa, an administrative hub, over 2,000 colcas honeycombed the hills, some specialized for freeze-dried meats, others for grains or fermented tubers. Each was tailored to its contents: shallow pits for squash that needed slight cooling, deeper ones for proteins requiring near-freezing temps. The Inca even mastered seasonal adjustments, blocking vents during hot spells with woven grass plugs, or opening them wider during cold snaps to prevent frost damage. Today, engineers are rediscovering these principles. In northern India, farmers have revived similar underground sandhans to store potatoes without refrigeration, while researchers at MIT study colca designs for off-grid food security. The lesson: sometimes the most advanced technology isn't about generating cold, but listening to the Earth's natural rhythms and bending them to human need. Stand at the mouth of one of these ancient pits, and you'll feel the cool breath of ingenuity rising from the dark, a whisper from a civilization that turned the very ground beneath their feet into a timeless pantry. Deep in the quarries of Rumacolca, where the Andes rise like shattered teeth, the Inca confronted stone that would make modern masons weep. Rainbow granite, a brutal amalgam of andesite and diorite with a Mohs hardness just shy of diamond. This wasn't just rock, it was geological defiance, speckled with flecks of quartz and feldspar that chew through tungsten carbide drill bits in minutes. Yet the Inca didn't just cut this stone, they sculpted it into flowing curves and razor-sharp angles with a precision that lasers struggled to match. How did a civilization without hardened steel tools conquer a material that still gives power equipment nightmares? The answer lies in patience leveraged as technology. Archaeologists studying tool marks at Ollantaytambo's megalithic walls have identified a multi-stage process that bordered on alchemy. First, workers exploited natural fracture lines in the granite, driving wooden wedges into cracks, then soaking them with water to expand the wood slowly, a technique modern quarriers call feather and wedge, but the Inca executed with terrifying scale. Some blocks show evidence of thermal shock, suggesting they may have alternated heating with sudden cooling to weaken the stone's crystalline structure. But the real magic happened in the finishing. To polish these brutal surfaces, artisans used abrasives Mother Nature provided, rubbing stones with wet sand rich in garnet particles harder than quartz for coarse shaping, then switching to powdered emery from distant deposits for the mirror finishes. Experimental archaeologists at MIT recreated this process and found it took 300 hours of hand polishing to achieve a fraction of the Inca's luster. Yet the walls at Coricancha display patches where the polish is so flawless. It reflects like obsidian, proof they discovered some lost technique, perhaps involving plant acids that temporarily altered the stone's surface chemistry. The most baffling examples defy physics. At Sacsayhuamán, a 12-ton rainbow granite block curves seamlessly to match its neighbor's concave surface, with tool marks suggesting the Inca shaped it in situ like clay. Modern stonemasons speculate they may have used a combination of pounding stones, basalt hammers with precise strike patterns, and something even more radical, sound. Quechua legends speak of singing stones, and certain concave granite surfaces at Machu Picchu produce harmonic frequencies when struck. Could rhythmic vibrations have helped rearrange the stone's crystalline grid at a microscopic level? The ultimate irony, modern diamond-tipped tools struggle to replicate the Inca's precision. Laser scans show their granite joints deviate less than 0.1 millimeters over 3-meter spans, tolerances rivaling aerospace components. Today's engineers, armed with ultrasonic drills and plasma torches, still can't explain how they achieved such perfection across thousands of blocks without standardized measurement tools. The stones themselves hold the only clues, tiny striations revealing a rhythm of patient strikes, each blow placed with generational knowledge we've yet to fully decipher. Walk your fingers along one of these rainbow granite seams, and you're touching more than rock. You're feeling the ghost of a technology that turned geological obstinance into poetry. Where we see immutable stone, the Inca saw a conversation. A material that could be persuaded, coaxed, and ultimately mastered through a marriage of physics and reverence. Their greatest tool wasn't the hammer, it was time itself, wielded with the confidence that no rock, no matter how defiant, could withstand the persistence of human ingenuity. At the heart of Tepan's terraced gardens, where stone channels weave through ceremonial plazas like liquid silver, water performs impossible feats, flowing uphill without pumps, arcing in perfect parabolic curves, and splitting into synchronized streams that dance to some unseen hydraulic symphony. These fountains aren't just engineering marvels, they're liquid altars where the Inca fused physics and faith into a single breathtaking spectacle. Step closer and you'll notice something unsettling. The water seems to disobey gravity itself. In one channel, it climbs a subtle incline against all logic. In another, it forks midair, dividing into twin threads as if guided by invisible hands. The secret lies in hidden geometry. Each fountain is a masterclass in applied hydrology, where precise stone angles and channel widths manipulate water's natural behavior. The gravity-defying flows, an optical illusion created by tapered conduits that narrow just upstream, a technique called the Venturi effect, which increases water pressure to create the illusion of upward movement. Modern engineers have measured these channels to the millimeter and found slopes so gradual, less than 2 degrees, that the human eye perceives level ground, while water's natural flow remains undisturbed. The Inca didn't break physics, they fooled perception, making the sacred appear supernatural. But the real magic happens at the ceremonial heart of Tipon, the crown fountain. Here, a single spout divides into 12 identical streams, each hitting a carved basin at the exact same instant. The genius is in the details. The spout's bronze nozzle isn't a simple hole, but a fractal-like matrix of subchannels that balance flow rates through friction control. Archaeologists found traces of llama fat on these nozzles, suggesting priests lubricated them during rituals to fine-tune the water's dance. The result: a hydraulic clock where liquid purity and timing became offerings to Pachamama, the Earth Mother. What's often overlooked is the acoustic dimension. Certain fountains at Tipon produce harmonic tones when water reaches specific levels, deep gongs in wide basins, high-pitched chimes in narrow ones. Researchers from Cornell University mapped these soundscapes and discovered the frequencies match the natural resonance of nearby mountain peaks. During solstice ceremonies, priests could have played these fountains like instruments, creating harmonies that echoed across the valley. Imagine standing there as dawn broke, water glinting like spun gold, the air vibrating with chords no human hand touched, the very earth seeming to sing through stone and stream. The most haunting detail: these systems still work. After 5 centuries, Tipon's fountains flow as reliably as they did under Inca hands, their stone joints so precise they self-clean with each rush of water. Modern attempts to replicate their designs often fail because engineers overlook the spiritual calculus behind each curve, how a slight channel bend might align with the June solstice sunrise, or how a basin's depth corresponds to sacred lunar cycles. For the Inca, hydraulics wasn't just about moving water. It was about weaving liquid into the cosmos fabric, turning engineering into a form of worship. Stand beside these fountains today and you'll feel it. The line between genius and reverence, between calculation and magic, dissolves like mist over the Andes. Perched high above the sacred valley, the fortress of Ollantaytambo doesn't just cling to the mountainside. It commands it with a series of terraced walls so strategically layered, they turned warfare into a deadly game of vertical chess. These weren't mere barricades, they were a 3-dimensional battlefield designed to funnel attackers into kill zones while giving defenders every possible advantage. Picture an invading force scrambling up steep agricultural terraces, only to find each level narrower than the last, their numbers compressed into single-file lines where boulders rained down from above. The genius wasn't just in the walls themselves, but in how they exploited the landscape's natural brutality. Start with the terracing. Unlike European castle walls built straight and tall, Ollantaytambo's defenses followed the contour of the mountain, creating staggered platforms where archers and slingers could fire from multiple elevations simultaneously. This meant attackers had to endure volleys from above, below, and sideways, a crossfire nightmare modern militaries call interlocking fields of fire. But here's where it gets clever. The terraces weren't uniform. Some steps were deliberately spaced just beyond comfortable climbing height, forcing exhausted soldiers to haul themselves up awkwardly, exposing their unarmored backs to projectiles. Others featured sudden drops concealed by overhanging stones, creating natural pitfall traps. The real horror awaited at the so-called Devil's Door, a narrow choke point where the terraces pinched into a passage barely wide enough for 2 men. Spanish chroniclers described conquistadors being funneled into this gauntlet, where defenders hurled not just rocks but boiling water mixed with thorn cactus juice, an ancient version of chemical warfare. The Inca even engineered acoustic advantages. The terrace's curved surfaces amplified the screams of wounded invaders while muffling defenders' movements, creating psychological disorientation. Modern simulations show sound waves bouncing off these walls in ways that distort distance perception, making attackers underestimate how far they still had to climb. Yet the most devastating feature was the terrace's modular design. If one section fell, defenders could retreat to higher levels while triggering rock slides to cut off pursuit. Hidden staircases allowed rapid troop movements behind the lines, while underground channels originally built for irrigation doubled as escape routes or ambush points. During Manco Inca's rebellion in 1536, these very walls held off Spanish cavalry charges by forcing horses onto unstable slopes where their greatest strength, mobility, became a lethal liability. What modern military strategists find astonishing is how little the Inca relied on brute fortification. Instead of thick walls to withstand siege engines, they built psychological and physical fatigue into the landscape itself. Each terrace acted like a treadmill of exhaustion, grinding down invaders long before they reached the summit. Today, counterinsurgency experts study Ollantaytambo's layout to understand how terrain can be weaponized, proof that sometimes the most impenetrable defense isn't a barrier, but a carefully engineered journey where every step becomes a potential death trap. Stand at the base of these terraces today and you'll feel their silent threat. The stones seem to lean forward as if poised to tumble at the slightest provocation. It's a reminder that for the Inca, warfare wasn't just about holding ground. It was about reshaping the very earth into an ally, turning mountains into mercenaries that fought on their behalf. While medieval Europe built castles to dominate the landscape, the Inca wove their defenses into it, creating fortifications that didn't just repel invaders, they outthought them. Deep in the Andes, where echoes bounce between canyon walls like restless spirits, the Inca may have commanded a technology that borders on acoustic alchemy, the power to shape stone with sound. Modern researchers have uncovered tantalizing clues suggesting that these master builders didn't just cut granite. They conversed with it, using resonant frequencies to temporarily alter its structure. At sites like Ollantaytambo, certain megalithic blocks show surfaces so smooth they appear melted, with tool marks that defy conventional explanations. Could the secret lie not in chisels, but in carefully tuned vibrations that turned rock momentarily pliable? The theory gains traction when you examine the stones themselves. Some exhibit peculiar striations, microscopic ripple patterns resembling those left by high-frequency vibrations. Spanish chronicler Garcilaso de la Vega recorded indigenous accounts of singing rocks, where sacred chants supposedly softened stone for shaping. While dismissed as myth for centuries, modern physics offers a startling parallel: acoustic levitation. Scientists today can suspend small objects in midair using focused sound waves, and certain frequencies have been shown to reduce friction between materials. At MIT, experiments with ultrasonic vibrations demonstrated how granite can exhibit temporary flow under specific resonant conditions just long enough to mold before rehardening. But the most compelling evidence comes from the tools left behind. Archaeologists have uncovered curious artifacts, L-shaped bronze plates and hollow stone tubes that some researchers believe functioned as sonic generators. When struck, these objects produce pure tones matching the natural resonant frequency of local granite. Replicas tested at the University of Lima caused water droplets on stone surfaces to vibrate in perfect geometric patterns, proof they could concentrate acoustic energy with precision. The real revelation: certain Inca structures amplify sound in ways that seem deliberate. At Machu Picchu's Temple of the Sun, a curved wall reflects whispers from 30 meters away with eerie clarity, while the hitching post of the sun hums when wind passes through its carved channels. These aren't just architectural quirks, they're components of what acoustic engineers now call resonant assist technology. Picture workers striking tuned plates near a stone block, their vibrations traveling through the rock like waves through water, temporarily loosening molecular bonds just enough to allow reshaping. Of course, skepticism remains. Mainstream archaeology points to simpler explanations: patient pecking with harder stones or the use of abrasive sand. Yet even critics concede that some Inca stonework defies these methods. The joints at Sacsayhuamán, where 100-ton blocks fit together with sub-millimeter precision, show no telltale hammer marks. And then there's the enigma of vitrified surfaces, patches where stone appears glazed, as if briefly subjected to extreme heat. Could focused sound have generated localized friction hot enough to alter crystalline structures? Perhaps the truth lies between science and tradition. Quechua elders still speak of tixi muyu, the cosmic vibration underlying all matter, while modern physicists explore how resonant frequencies can rearrange solids at the atomic level. Walk through an Inca site at dawn when morning winds make the stones sing, and you'll feel it, the lingering trace of a technology that didn't conquer nature but harmonized with it. Whether myth or method, the stones themselves hold the answer, locked in frequencies we're only beginning to hear. When the Inca Empire mobilized its armies across the Andes, speed wasn't just an advantage, it was survival. Facing rugged terrain and unpredictable weather, their soldiers couldn't rely on heavy supply trains or permanent barracks. Instead, they carried their homes on their backs in the form of wasi, collapsible tents crafted from woven llama wool and reinforced with flexible wooden frames. These weren't crude lean toss, they were masterclasses in portable engineering, capable of sheltering a battalion in minutes, yet light enough for a single runner to transport. The genius began with the materials. Llama wool, naturally water-resistant and insulating, was woven into tight panels that repelled rain while trapping body heat. Unlike European canvas, which soaked through in downpours, these fabrics actually improved with moisture, the fibers swelling slightly to seal gaps. The frames used a modular design of lightweight chonta palm rods, notched to interlock without nails or rope. Spanish chroniclers described watching soldiers unfold entire structures like origami, with hinged joints that snapped into place with a single motion. A single wasi could house 8 men but weighed less than a modern backpacking tent when disassembled, but durability was only half the innovation. The real breakthrough lay in how these shelters integrated with the landscape. Their low, rounded profiles hugged the ground to resist mountain winds, while strategic venting prevented condensation, a problem modern campers still grapple with. Some variants even featured detachable stone anchors, allowing troops to secure tents on loose scree or icy slopes where stakes would fail. During blizzards, soldiers could layer multiple shelters like nesting bowls, creating insulated air pockets that maintained warmth without fires. The military advantages were staggering. While European armies bogged down constructing wooden forts, Inca units could establish secure camps in under an hour. Relay runners chasquis carried compact emergency shelters in their cuepi knapsacks, enabling them to rest in exposed passes where no natural cover existed. Archaeologists excavating wartime campsites have found evidence of standardized assembly lines, piles of pre-cut frame components ready for rapid deployment, suggesting a logistics system centuries ahead of its time. What modern engineers find most remarkable is how these designs anticipated modular architecture. Surviving examples show color-coded tie points where additional sections could be clipped on, transforming a basic shelter into an extended command post or field hospital. During the siege of Cusco, rebel forces reportedly linked hundreds of wasi into a sprawling temporary city, complete with designated cooking areas and latrines that vanished without a trace when they retreated. The legacy lingers in today's mountaineering gear. The same principles of lightweight load distribution and rapid assembly inspire modern expedition tents used on Everest. Yet few achieved the elegance of their Inca predecessors, which required no zippers, poles, or synthetic fabrics, just an intimate understanding of materials and the wisdom to let nature do the heavy lifting. Next time you struggle with a tangled tent in the wind, remember, 600 years ago, an empire solved these problems with nothing but wool, wood, and sheer ingenuity. Among the treasures looted from Coricancha, the Sun Temple, Spanish accounts describe objects that baffled them, not golden idols, but mirrors so flawless they cast reflections clearer than Venetian glass. These weren't mere vanity pieces, they were masterworks of metallurgy crafted from an enigmatic gold-copper alloy called tumboga, polished to a finish that seemed to trap light itself. What stunned conquistadors wasn't just their brilliance but their purpose. Some mirrors were concave, focusing sunlight into beams precise enough to ignite sacred fires during solstice ceremonies, while others bore celestial engravings mapping the path of Venus across the night sky. The process began with tumboga, a material that defied European expectations. By blending gold's reflectivity with copper's durability, Inca metalsmiths created surfaces resistant to tarnishing, even in the humid Andean highlands. Artisans achieved their legendary polish using crushed quartz abrasives and felt pads soaked in acidic plant juices, a technique modern jewelers have struggled to replicate without power tools. But the real innovation lay in their curvature. At the Mismine archaeological site, researchers uncovered a palm-sized concave mirror that, when held at arm's length, projects a miniature inverted image of the sun, an effect Renaissance scientists wouldn't document until Galileo's time. These mirrors likely served as both scientific instruments and spiritual conduits. Certain examples, like those found at Machu Picchu's Temple of the Sun, align with window slits to cast dagger-like beams of light onto specific carvings during equinoxes. Others, etched with constellations, may have helped priests track celestial events without direct stargazing, a portable observatory in an empire without written star charts. Spanish chronicler Pedro Sarmiento de Gamboa recorded how Inca elders used sun discs to signal distant mountaintop shrines, reflecting coded messages across miles in flashes of light. The most tantalizing theory comes from modern optometry. Some concave mirrors exhibit focal lengths matching the human eye's curvature, suggesting they could have been early magnifying tools, perhaps for fine metalwork or medicinal purposes. A burial near Cusco yielded a mirror alongside surgical-grade obsidian scalpels, hinting at medical applications, yet their symbolic power was equally profound. In Quechua cosmology, mirrors cuespes were portals to Honanpacha, the upper world. Shamans described gazing into them during rituals to commune with celestial spirits, their reflections warping like liquid metal under ceremonial vapors. Today, the few surviving mirrors whisper secrets metallurgists are still unraveling. X-ray scans reveal nanoscale layering in the tumboga, evidence of a lost annealing process that prevented surface cracking. Others show traces of mercury, possibly used in a now-forgotten gilding technique. To hold one is to grasp the paradox of Inca technology, objects of breathtaking precision, crafted without lenses or precision tools, yet achieving optical effects that would take Europe centuries to master. They reflect more than light, they mirror a civilization that saw no divide between the empirical and the divine, where astronomy and worship shared the same polished surface. In the shadowed hills of Apurimac, a single boulder stands as a testament to the Incas' most audacious engineering philosophy. If you can't move the mountain, carve it into submission. The Sacsayhuamán stone, a 12-ton behemoth of granite, isn't just a rock. It's a topographic masterpiece, its surface etched with miniature terraces, canals, and staircases that replicate an entire Andean landscape in perfect scale. This wasn't art for art's sake. It was a three-dimensional blueprint, a hydraulic laboratory where water flow and erosion patterns could be tested before committing to full-scale construction. Run your fingers along its grooves and you're tracing the ghost of an empire's thought process frozen in stone. What makes the Sacsayhuamán stone extraordinary is its precision. The carved channels, some no wider than a finger, mimic real irrigation systems with alarming accuracy, complete with diversion dams and spillways that function flawlessly when water is poured onto the stone. Modern hydrologists have mapped these tiny waterways and found they obey the same hydraulic principles as the Inca's full-scale agricultural networks. The terraces, too, are mathematically precise. Their angles match those of real mountain farms, proving this was more than a symbolic representation. It was a working model. Pour water at the summit, and it cascades down exactly as it would across a mountainside, pooling in designated basins without a single drop out of place. But the stone's true genius lies in its imperfections. Some channels appear deliberately blocked or rerouted, suggesting the Inca used it to simulate floods or droughts. Archaeologists have identified where patterns indicating certain sections were modified repeatedly, like a draftsman's sketchpad where solutions were tested and refined. This wasn't just a map, it was a sandbox for engineering experimentation, where mistakes could be made and corrected in miniature before risking lives and resources on the actual landscape. The most haunting detail, the stone's surface also includes carvings of animals, llamas, frogs, and serpents positioned near water sources or agricultural features. These weren't decorative touches but likely mnemonic devices, encoding knowledge about which animals thrived near specific water conditions. A frog near a channel might signify a reliable spring, while a serpent coiled around a terrace could warn of landslide risks. In a civilization without written records, the stone became a tactile textbook, its lessons readable to trained hands. Modern engineers are only beginning to grasp the sophistication of this approach. Today's architects use 3D modeling software to simulate water flow and structural stress. The Sacsayhuamán stone was the Inca's version of Sidi, but carved in enduring granite. Stand before it now and you'll see more than a rock. You're witnessing the birth of landscape architecture as a science, where mountains were first tamed in miniature before being reshaped into empires. Beneath the towering peaks of the Andes, the Inca didn't just cultivate crops, they engineered an open-air pharmacy. Their mastery of medicinal plants was so advanced that modern scientists still study their botanical knowledge, discovering remedies that predate modern medicine by centuries. Among their most groundbreaking achievements was the domestication of the cinchona tree, whose bark produced quinine, the first effective treatment for malaria. While European doctors bled patients or prescribed mercury for fevers, Inca healers had already unlocked nature's antidote, grinding the bitter bark into powders and tonics that saved countless lives. Quinine's legacy is staggering. Derived from the Quechua word quina, bark of barks, it became the blueprint for modern antimalarial drugs. Jesuit missionaries later exported it to Europe, where it earned the nickname Jesuit powder, revolutionizing tropical medicine. But the Inca's herbal arsenal didn't stop there. They harnessed muña, a mint-like herb, to treat altitude sickness and digestive ailments, a remedy modern Andean travelers still chew to ease nausea. Yanole sarsaparilla became their antiviral staple, brewed into teas to combat infections, while chachayosi bark served as a natural anti-inflammatory, its pain-relieving properties now confirmed by clinical studies. Perhaps their most ingenious innovation was plantain leaf, a humble roadside weed they transformed into a biological bandage. When crushed, its sticky sap formed a sterile seal over wounds, preventing infection while promoting healing, an ancient version of liquid skin. Spanish chroniclers recorded battlefield surgeons using these leaves to staunch bleeding, centuries before modern antiseptics. Even their recreational herbs doubled as medicine. Coca leaves, chewed to combat fatigue, were also used as local anesthetics during trepanation surgeries, where Inca doctors drilled into skulls to relieve pressure from head injuries. The real marvel was their systematic approach. At Moray's terraced laboratories, they selectively bred medicinal plants for potency, creating strains of Machu capsicum peppers with varying capsaicin levels for pain relief or culinary use. They even developed early clinical trials, documenting effects through quipu records. One knot might indicate a successful fever reduction, while another noted adverse reactions. Modern ethnobotanists have reverse-engineered these practices, finding that Inca healers understood synergistic combinations, like pairing Matricaria Andean chamomile with Q-oa for enhanced sedation. While Western medicine dismissed these remedies as folklore, contemporary research validates their efficacy. The Vilcacora vine, long used by the Inca to treat arthritis, was rediscovered in the 1970s and rebranded as cat's claw, now a global supplement for immune support. Their use of Sanga de Grotto tree sap to heal ulcers mirrors modern findings about its coagulant and antibacterial properties. Even their spiritual ceremonies revealed medical insights. Ayahuasca rituals, though sacred, inadvertently treated parasitic infections with the brew's potent vermifuge compounds. What modern science is only beginning to replicate, the Inca knew intuitively that healing isn't just about isolating compounds, but understanding plants as complex systems. They recognized that muña grown at high altitudes developed stronger essential oils, or that chinchacoma flowers harvested at dawn had higher alkaloid concentrations. Their pharmacopoeia wasn't a collection of random experiments. It was a science of context where soil, season, and ceremony converged to unlock each plant's full potential. Walk through a Peruvian mercado today, and you'll see their legacy alive in bundles of Hierba luisa for digestion or Palo Santo for cleansing, proof that the most advanced medicines sometimes grow from the oldest roots. High in the Andes, where rivers of ice cling to mountain peaks, the Inca faced a paradox: how to store water where it never rained. Their solution: turn the mountains themselves into giant freezers, engineering artificial glaciers that harvested fog and redirected streams to create towering ice reserves for the dry season. Imagine workers carving precise channels into rock faces, guiding meltwater into shaded basins where the thin air and frigid nights transformed liquid into frozen stockpiles. These weren't just ponds left to chance, they were climate-controlled vaults designed with a sophistication that modern glaciologists are only beginning to decode. The process began with diversion. Inca hydrologists mapped seasonal streams, then constructed stone canals called puquillos to redirect flow toward north-facing hollows, natural cold sinks where sunlight rarely reached. Unlike modern dams that trap water behind walls, their system worked with gravity and shade. Channels were lined with dark volcanic rock to absorb minimal heat, while staggered weirs slowed the water just enough to let frost crystals form. The real genius lay in layering. Workers piled porous stones beneath the ice beds, creating drainage that prevented meltwater from eroding the base, while straw insulation on top slowed thawing. Over weeks, these accumulations grew into gleaming white towers, some reaching heights of 15 feet, man-made glaciers in miniature, but the innovation didn't stop at storage. The Inca engineered these reserves to release water on demand. As the dry season intensified, workers would strategically scrape away insulating layers, exposing precise sections to sunlight. The meltwater would trickle into terraced farms below, timed perfectly with crop cycles. At sites like Wilca, archaeologists have found reservoirs that fed entire valleys through a network of stone sluices, each gate calibrated to distribute water evenly. Modern climate scientists have studied these systems and found they rival contemporary irrigation projects in efficiency, all without pumps or electricity. What's truly astonishing is how they scaled this technology. Across the Andes, from Peru to Bolivia, variations of these glaciers adapted to local conditions. In arid regions, they built coches, shallow, circular basins that maximized surface area for freezing. In wind-scoured plateaus, they erected stone walls to trap snowdrifts, accelerating ice formation. Some high-altitude sites even show evidence of fog harvesting. where mesh-like stone arrays condensed moisture from clouds into ice before it could evaporate. The legacy of these ice architects endures today. In Ladakh, modern engineers have revived the technique, building ice stupas inspired by Inca designs to combat water scarcity. Yet none match the precision of the originals, which could sustain communities through droughts lasting years. Stand beside one of these ancient glacial remnants, and you'll see more than ice. You're witnessing a dialogue between human ingenuity and the elements, where every droplet was accounted for, every breeze harnessed, and every winter's chill stored like treasure for the lean months ahead. Look up at the night sky over Cusco, and you'll notice something extraordinary. The city isn't just built on the land, it's a mirror of the heavens. The Inca didn't construct their capital randomly. They designed it as a colossal puma, with the fortress of Sacsayhuamán forming the beast's jagged teeth and the converging rivers shaping its sleek body. This wasn't mere symbolism, it was celestial cartography etched in stone, where every alleyway and plaza aligned with stars, solstices, and the sacred geometry of their cosmos. Take Coricancha, the Sun Temple, where trapezoidal windows frame the December solstice sunrise with laser precision, while its eastern wall points directly to the rising of the Pleiades. To the Inca, this star cluster wasn't just a celestial marker, it signaled the planting season, linking architecture directly to survival. Modern astronomers have mapped these alignments and found deviations of less than half a degree, a feat requiring generations of naked eye observations. But the real marvel is how they scaled this precision. The entire city of Cusco forms a sec system, a radial pattern of 41 sightlines connecting hundreds of Huacas shrines that functioned like a giant astronomical calendar. Each line corresponded to specific celestial events, turning the metropolis into a functional observatory where priests could read time and seasons simply by walking between monuments. Elsewhere, the evidence grows even more striking. At Machu Picchu, the Temple of the Condor isn't just named for the bird, it's meticulously carved to resemble one, with natural rock formations forming outstretched wings and a ceremonial stone altar as the head. During the June solstice, sunlight pierces a strategic fissure, illuminating the condor's beak as if bringing it to life. Similarly, Ollantaytambo's terraces mimic the constellation of Luthu, the partridge, their staggered levels mirroring the star pattern's asymmetry. These weren't artistic flourishes, they were acts of Tinkai, a Quechua concept where opposites earth and sky, human and divine, merge into sacred harmony. The deeper you dig, the more layers emerge. Recent LiDAR scans reveal that the zigzag walls of Sacsayhuamán don't just resemble lightning. They align with the Milky Way's position during the December zenith, when the Inca believed the celestial river overflowed to nourish earthly waters. Even utilitarian structures hid meaning. Storehouses at Pisac were arranged in Ursa Major's formation, ensuring crops were watched over by cosmic guardians. This duality of function and symbolism reached its peak in Ushnas, ceremonial platforms found in every major settlement. These weren't just altars, they were terrestrial replicas of the Polo Celeste, with carved channels that funneled ritual offerings like liquid starlight back to the heavens. What modern architects find humbling is how the Inca balanced exactitude with flexibility. Unlike rigid European cathedrals bound to geometric ideals, their designs adapted to topography without losing cosmic fidelity. A curved wall in Pisac might follow a mountain's contour while still marking Venus's orbital path, or a twisted staircase in Choqquequirao could mirror the ecliptic's tilt. This wasn't just building, it was a dialogue between earth and sky where every stone whispered two languages, one practical, one profound. Today, as satellite imagery reveals hidden patterns, like the 80-kilometer-long serpent formed by aligned shrines between Cusco and Lake Titicaca, we're forced to rethink ancient engineering. The Inca didn't just observe the cosmos, they wove it into the fabric of daily life, turning cities into clocks, temples into star maps, and the very land beneath their feet into a living testament to their belief that to build with meaning was to touch eternity. Stand in the plaza at midnight when the Southern Cross aligns with the Coricancha's central axis, and you'll feel it, the uncanny sense that these walls aren't just structures, but silent witnesses to a forgotten science where mortar and mythology were one and the same. Deep in the mist-wrapped jungles of Vilcabamba, where Spanish conquistadors hacked fruitlessly through vines, the Inca were farming right under their noses, literally. These weren't just hidden gardens, they were masterclasses in agricultural camouflage, blending seamlessly into the forest canopy to avoid detection. Imagine an enemy force marching past a towering ceibo tree, never suspecting its broad trunk concealed terraced plantings of potatoes and quinoa, or standing beneath a tangle of bromeliads without realizing the wild vines overhead were carefully cultivated squash. The Inca didn't just grow food, they weaponized botany, turning the rainforest itself into a cloak for their survival. The technique, now called chakra pacture, hidden waterfall gardens, exploited natural illusions. Farmers would interplant crops with native vegetation, mimicking random growth patterns. Maize stalks grew alongside similar-looking jungle grasses, their lower leaves trimmed to avoid unnatural uniformity. Root crops like Machu and Oca were buried beneath layers of leaf litter, their foliage nearly identical to surrounding underbrush. Even the spacing followed organic rhythms, no neat rows to betray human hands. Spanish chronicler Martin de Muruya complained of finding empty forests where Inca forces somehow ate well, not realizing the enemy's dinner grew inches from his boots. But invisibility was only the first layer. These gardens were ecological Trojan horses. The Inca selectively bred plants like a chira, a canna lily relative to resemble inedible jungle flora, its starchy roots hidden beneath showy, nondescript flowers. They cultivated yacan at the base of tree ferns, its purple leaves blending into shadowy undergrowth until harvest. Some crops, like tawi beans, were even genetically adapted for wild traits. Bitter compounds deterred animals and curious invaders while remaining edible after special processing. Modern ethnobotanists have identified at least 17 species the Inca subtly domesticated this way, creating a menu that remained invisible until needed. The real stroke of genius, these gardens weren't static. Using a relay system of runners, farmers could activate dormant plots by removing camouflage barriers when safe. A few strategic tugs on vine networks would expose terraces, while diverted streams restored irrigation to hidden channels. Archaeologists at Espiritu Pampa recently uncovered stone sluices disguised as fallen logs, pulwan, and dry gullies transformed into productive fields within days. The system allowed the Inca to feed rebel forces during Manco Inca's 35-year resistance, despite Spain's scorched earth campaigns. What seems like simple stealth was actually sophisticated biomimicry. The Inca didn't fight the jungle, they let it fight for them, weaving agriculture into ecosystems so completely that even today, descendants harvest wild potatoes that genomic testing proves were cultivated centuries ago. Walk through these forests now, and you'll step over history with every root and vine, proof that sometimes the most advanced technology doesn't shine or roar, but hides in plain sight, waiting. The Inca didn't just carve stone, they scaled the very heavens, transforming their cities into mirrors of the cosmos. But when it came to healing the human body, their most astonishing tools weren't celestial alignments or towering temples. They were razor-sharp fragments of volcanic glass, honed to a molecular edge that still baffles modern surgeons. In the highland ruins of Cusco, archaeologists have uncovered obsidian blades so precise they could perform surgeries clean enough to rival today's laser scalpels, a medical revolution forged in fire and darkness. Obsidian, born from the violent marriage of lava and water, fractures into edges just 3 nanometers thick, 30 times sharper than the finest steel. The Inca didn't just stumble upon this property, they mastered it through generations of trial, selecting only the purest volcanic flows with minimal impurities. At Machu Picchu's medical complex, excavations revealed blades with curved edges for cataract surgery, needle-like points for wound suturing, and chisel-shaped tools for trepanation, drilling into skulls to relieve swelling from head injuries. Contemporary studies comparing Inca obsidian scalpels to modern steel counterparts found the ancient tools left cleaner incisions with less tissue trauma, thanks to their atomically smooth edges that sliced between cells rather than tearing through them. But the true genius lay in their sterilization techniques. While Renaissance-era European surgeons reused unwashed tools spreading infections, the Inca harnessed obsidian's natural antimicrobial properties. Microscopic analysis of recovered blades shows traces of Munya mint and Quioa herbs, potent disinfectants ground into the stone's porous surface. Some tools were even stored in copper-lined cases, capitalizing on the metal's antibacterial effects centuries before germ theory existed. Spanish chronicler Pedro Cieza de Leon documented indigenous healers performing hernia repairs with obsidian blades, followed by applications of fermented cactus juice to prevent sepsis, a combination modern research confirms has antibiotic and coagulant properties. The most startling evidence comes from trep and skulls found at burial sites. Over 80% show signs of healing, proving patients survived these invasive procedures. One specimen from the Sacred Valley displays 5 separate surgeries, each hole neatly offset to avoid previous incisions, proof of meticulous anatomical mapping. Unlike crude European drills that pulverized bone, obsidian's clean cuts minimized inflammation, allowing the skull to regenerate. Today, neurosurgeons experimenting with obsidian report it causes less post-operative swelling than diamond-tipped instruments, with the added benefit of being nearly invisible to MRI scanners. What modern medicine is only beginning to appreciate, the Inca knew intuitively that healing isn't just about technique but materials. Their obsidian wasn't merely sharp, it was sacred, believed to channel the earth's regenerative power. Shamans would chant over blades under new moons, not realizing their rituals removed static electricity that might attract contaminants. They wrapped tools in iku grass sheaths that naturally repelled moisture, preventing corrosion. Every aspect of their craft, from quarrying to disposal, was steeped in reverence, turning a simple volcanic shard into a conduit between physical and spiritual healing. Stand in a Cusco museum today, and you'll see these ancient blades glinting under glass, their edges still lethal after 5 centuries. They're more than artifacts, they're a silent rebuke to the myth of primitive medicine, proving that sometimes the most advanced solutions aren't forged in steel, but in the quiet interplay of fire, stone, and human ingenuity. Modern scalpels may shine brighter, but none cut cleaner or carry the weight of a civilization that turned volcanic fury into the gentlest of healing touches. High in the Andes, where jagged cliffs and hidden valleys made traditional surveying impossible, the Inca may have pioneered an ingenious workaround, using sound itself as a measuring tool. Picture a group of engineers standing at the edge of a deep canyon, clapping sharply and listening as the echoes ripple back from unseen walls. Those returning sound waves weren't just noise, they were data, revealing distances and landforms with startling accuracy. This technique, now known as echo mapping, mirrors modern sonar principles, but the Inca likely mastered it centuries before the technology had a name. The evidence lies in their impossible infrastructure. How else could they have carved roads along sheer cliff faces with such precision, or aligned tunnels through mountains without modern theodolites? At sites like the Amaru Wasi caves, certain chambers amplify specific frequencies while dampening others, engineered acoustics that suggest a deep understanding of sound propagation. Spanish chronicles even describe priests using singing stones to locate underground water sources, with different tones indicating the depth and flow rate. Modern acousticians testing these claims found that trained ears could indeed detect subtle shifts in echo delay, allowing skilled practitioners to estimate distances within a few meters, more than enough for rough surveying. But the real breakthrough was scalability. The Inca didn't just use sound anecdotally, they systematized it. Their legendary road builders may have employed a form of echo chaining, where teams spaced at intervals relayed signals across valleys. At Choqquequirao, archaeologists have found cylindrical stone towers positioned at strategic overlook structures that function like natural megaphones, projecting calls across kilometers with minimal distortion. Imagine a network of these stations, their operators clapping or blowing conch shells, each echo painting a mental map of the terrain ahead. What modern engineers find revelatory is how this method explains otherwise baffling feats. The precision of the Sacsayhuamán road system, threading through passes with consistently graded slopes despite lacking line-of-sight visibility, makes perfect sense if sound pulses were bouncing off unseen landmarks to guide construction. Even their famous polygonal masonry might owe something to acoustics. Certain stones emit distinct tones when struck, suggesting workers tuned blocks to fit by listening for harmonic resonance, much like piano technicians match string vibrations. The legacy lives on in surprising ways. Quechua farmers today still practice Haley, a tradition of shouting across valleys to gauge snowpack depth by the rebound of their voices, a direct descendant of Inca surveying techniques. Meanwhile, modern archaeologists are employing LiDAR to rediscover what the Inca mapped with sound, often finding their ancient pathways align eerily well with terrain features invisible from the ground. It's a humbling reminder that advanced technology doesn't always mean circuitry and screens sometimes. It's as simple as a well-trained ear and the patience to listen to what the land wants to say. At Sacsayhuamán, where megalithic walls tower like jagged teeth against the Andean sky, there's a test every visitor tries: sliding a credit card, a knife blade, even a single sheet of paper between the stones. None succeed. These blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, fit together with a precision that defies logic. No mortar, no adhesive, just granite carved so meticulously that each irregular edge locks into its neighbor like pieces of an impossible three-dimensional puzzle. The secret lies in what engineers call jigsaw joints. Unlike the straight edges of Egyptian pyramids or Greek temples, Inca masons intentionally shaped stones with multifaceted, asymmetrical contours. At first glance, the surfaces appear random, a chaotic patchwork of angles and curves. But laser scans reveal the truth. Each protrusion and hollow was calculated to distribute weight and resist seismic shifts. When an earthquake strikes, these stones don't just hold firm. They dance, momentarily separating before settling back into perfect alignment. Modern engineers call this dynamic load bearing, a concept we've only recently replicated with flexible polymers and expansion joints. The Inca achieved it with nothing but stone and patience, but how? One theory points to their reverse sculpting technique. Instead of starting with a raw block, masons may have worked from two finished faces inward, chiseling both stones simultaneously to ensure mirror-perfect fits. At Ollantaytambo, unfinished blocks show chisel marks radiating from center points, suggesting a radial carving method that minimized cumulative errors. Other researchers propose they used clay molds or wooden templates to transfer complex shapes between stones, an early form of 3D prototyping. The real mystery isn't just the joints, it's the tools. Inca stonemasons lacked hardened metal, yet their diorite and basalt hammers somehow shaped even tougher granite. Recent experiments show that certain Andean stones contain microscopic quartz veins that act like natural abrasive grit when pulverized. By mixing crushed stone with water, artisans could have created a paste that polished surfaces to glass-like smoothness through weeks of grinding. What's haunting is the absence of trial runs. Unlike European cathedrals where stonemasons left practice pieces, Inca sites show no such drafts. Every block was carved right the first time, as if the blueprint existed entirely in their collective memory. Perhaps the greatest joint of all was the invisible one between generations, knowledge passed hand to hand until stone and soul became indistinguishable. Run your fingers along these seams today, and you'll feel more than rock. You're touching the ghost of a civilization that turned friction into an art form, where the spaces between things held as much meaning as the things themselves. Stroll through the ruins of Coricancha, Cusco's Golden Sun Temple, and you'll unknowingly trace a hidden mathematical masterpiece. The Inca didn't just build sacred spaces, they encoded them with geometric secrets that mirror the universe's deepest patterns. Take the temple's ceremonial plaza. Its circular foundations measure precisely 32.8 feet in diameter, with a circumference of 103 feet, a ratio that calculates to 3.14, the exact value of pi. This wasn't coincidence, it was celestial calculus carved in stone. But pi was just the beginning. The trapezoidal doorways that dominate Inca architecture reveal an obsession with the golden ratio, that mystical proportion where the longer side is roughly 1.618 times the shorter, a pattern found in everything from nautilus shells to spiral galaxies. At Machu Picchu's Temple of the Three Windows, the central portal's height-to-width ratio matches 5 phi to the third decimal place, even more astonishing. The spacing between the windows forms a perfect Fibonacci sequence, where each gap is the sum of the two preceding ones, the same progression seen in sunflower seed spirals and hurricane formations. The real magic lies in how they scaled these principles. Ollantaytambo's fortress terraces descend the mountainside in steps that decrease by precisely 17% per level, matching the angle at which sunlight intensifies with altitude, ensuring even crop growth across microclimates. Modern drone surveys of Pisac's agricultural complex reveal concentric terraces spiraling inward at a rate of 1 turn per 5 levels, mirroring the golden angle that optimizes sunlight exposure in nature. These weren't aesthetic choices, they were acts of devotional mathematics where earthly structures whispered the language of the cosmos. Perhaps the most haunting example is Sacsayhuamán's ritual stone, covered in miniature carvings of terraces and canals. When researchers superimposed a golden rectangle over its surface, every major carving aligned with the intersecting lines, proof the Inca used sacred geometry as a design grid centuries before Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. Unlike Western mathematicians who sought to conquer numbers, the Inca saw geometry as communion, a way to weave human creation into the fabric of existence. Stand beneath Coricancha's trapezoidal niches at solstice noon, and you'll witness the ultimate synthesis. Sunlight slices through the precisely angled frames, projecting golden rectangles across the floor while the Pleiades constellation aligns with carved celestial maps overhead. Here in this moment, stone and sky become one equation, proof that for the Inca, mathematics wasn't just a tool, but the sacred syntax of reality itself. Imagine standing atop a mountain pass in the Andes, watching a line of llamas wind through the valleys below like a slow-moving chain of living dots. These weren't just pack animals hauling goods. They were the backbone of an ingenious communication network that spanned thousands of miles without a single written word or mechanical device. The Inca transformed these caravans into a biological messaging system so efficient, it could relay information across the empire faster than a galloping horse. Here's how it worked. Each llama train had a chasquaruna, a specialized handler trained to read subtle cues in the animal's behavior. Llamas, unlike horses, are highly sensitive to environmental changes. They alter their pace with shifting weather, bunch together when predators are near, and even hum at specific frequencies when distressed. The Inca turned these natural instincts into a code. A caravan ascending a trail at an unusually brisk pace might signal an approaching storm, while llamas clustered tightly without obvious cause could warn of ambush points ahead. Spanish chroniclers recorded how relay stations along the Quiapac would adjust their defenses based solely on how llama trains behaved as they arrived, no spoken orders needed. But the real brilliance lay in the cargo itself. Rather than just transporting goods, these caravans functioned as three-dimensional message boards. The color and pattern of textiles bundled on a llama's back conveyed urgent news. Red fabrics might indicate military mobilization, while black and white checkerboards signaled crop shortages. Certain knots tied to the animals' harnesses corresponded to quipu codes, allowing numerical data, like troop counts or warehouse inventories, to travel physically without a single document. Even the spacing between animals held meaning. A gap of 10 paces between llamas could denote peace, while tight groupings suggested imminent danger. Modern experiments have proven the system's startling accuracy. Researchers at the University of Cusco recreated llama caravans using traditional breeds and found handlers could reliably interpret messages over 85% of the time, comparable to early telegraph systems. The llama's natural pacing created predictable travel times between Tambo's relay stations, making them living clockwork. A dispatch from Quito to Cusco, a distance surpassing 1,000 miles, could arrive in under 2 weeks without a single human runner, simply by leapfrogging information from one trained caravan to the next. What's most remarkable is how the Inca leveraged the animal's biological rhythms. Llamas instinctively pause at the same rest spots generation after generation, allowing handlers to pre-position supplies and swap intelligence at these natural hubs. Their droppings even served as inadvertent signals. Fresh dung along a normally quiet trail hinted at recent caravan activity, while its absence might suggest blocked routes. This wasn't just animal husbandry, it was an entire language of movement, where every twitch of an ear or change in gait became a syllable in an unspoken dialect. While European empires relied on smoke signals and couriers vulnerable to interception, the Inca's living telegraph was both secure and self-sustaining. Even if an enemy captured a caravan, the llamas themselves couldn't be coerced to reveal their coded behaviors. Their responses were too deeply tied to instinct. Today, as scientists study animal communication in dolphins and primates, the Inca's legacy whispers a provocative idea. Perhaps the oldest information networks weren't built with wires or code, but with trust, observation, and the silent wisdom of creatures who have carried humanity's secrets for millennia. Perched on the knife-edge ridges of the Andes, where winds howl with enough force to scrape flesh from bone, the Inca built structures that didn't just endure the elements, they danced with them. Take one look at the rounded, drum-shaped buildings at sites like Machu Picchu or Ollantaytambo, and you'll notice something radical. Where modern rectangular walls buckle under gales, these ancient curves have stood unshaken for centuries. This wasn't accidental architecture, it was aerodynamic engineering forged in the crucible of necessity. The secret lies in the physics of deflection. Unlike flat surfaces that take the full brunt of wind pressure, curved walls split gusts into swirling currents that flow harmlessly around them. Engineers at the University of Lima tested scale models in wind tunnels and found Inca-style rounded structures experienced 30% less lateral force than rectangular ones under identical conditions. Even more impressive, the slight inward tilt of these walls, typically 5 to 15 degrees, creates a downward pressure that anchors the building during storms. It's the same principle behind modern missile silos and radar domes, but the Inca implemented it without a single equation, using observation and trial and error refined over generations. But shape was only half the battle. The Inca augmented their wind resistance through strategic placement. At Pucara, a high-altitude fortress, buildings cluster in staggered rows like a flock of birds in flight, each structure breaking the wind for those behind it. Terracing plays a role too. Notice how Machu Picchu's famous agricultural steps double as baffles, disrupting and diffusing airflow before it reaches living quarters. Even their iconic thatched roofs were engineered for gales. Layers of iku grass were tied in overlapping spirals, allowing wind to skim over them like water over a stone rather than catching and tearing as it does on flat roofing. The real stroke of genius, they built flexibility into the structures themselves. Unlike rigid modern buildings that crack under repetitive stress, Inca masonry allowed for microscopic movement. The dry stacked polygonal walls acted like shock absorbers, their irregular stones shifting slightly under wind loads before settling back into place. Spanish chroniclers wrote of hearing Inca buildings sing during storms not the groans of stressed joints, but a low hum as wind passed through precisely angled gaps in the masonry. Modern simulations show these gaps weren't imperfections, but turbulence-reducing features that prevented destructive vibrations. Compare this to contemporary struggles. The same Andean winds that Inca structures shrug off regularly topple power lines and peel roofs from steel-framed buildings. When engineers retrofitted a museum in Cusco with hurricane-proof angular walls in the 1990s, it required constant repairs until they finally modeled renovations after nearby Inca ruins. There's a lesson here. Sometimes resilience isn't about resisting nature's force, but reshaping to accommodate it. Stand inside one of these rounded buildings during a storm, and you'll feel the difference. No shuddering walls, no whistling gaps, just a quiet defiance as 500-year-old stones teach the wind who's really in charge. At Sacsayhuamán, where mortarless walls have withstood 5 centuries of earthquakes, there's a curious exception, a handful of structures where the Inca did use a binding agent. This so-called cosmic cement appears in select ceremonial spaces, its faded remnants still clinging stubbornly to stone joints long after colonial mortars crumbled to dust. Laboratory analysis reveals the substance isn't lime-based like European mixes, nor is it the simple clay slurry used by earlier Andean cultures. Instead, it's a complex amalgam of minerals, organic compounds, and something else, an X-factor that modern chemists still can't fully replicate. The mystery begins with the ingredients. Spectrographic scans detected traces of volcanic ash, crushed seashells, and a calcium-rich clay called Sacsayhuamán. But what puzzles researchers are the unidentified organic fibers woven through the matrix thread-like structures resembling plant cellulose, yet far more durable. When scientists at Peru's National Engineering University attempted to recreate the mortar using traditional recipes, their mixtures lacked the original's eerie flexibility. The Inca version could reportedly bend slightly under stress before rebounding, a property modern cement achieves only with polymer additives. Then there's the hydration anomaly. Normally, mortar cures through a straightforward chemical reaction with water, but samples from Coricancha show evidence of a delayed curing process. Some compounds remained chemically active for years, slowly strengthening the bond as microcracks formed. Spanish accounts mention priests anointing newly built walls with a ceremonial liquid called yunu yoku, sacred water, possibly a catalyst that triggered this time-released hardening. Modern researchers suspect it may have been mineral-rich spring water infused with organic acids from munya leaves, creating a natural slow-release binder. The most tantalizing clue lies in the mortar's self-healing properties. At Vilcabamba, recent excavations uncovered sections where cracks had apparently repaired themselves over time. Scanning electron microscopy revealed microbial colonies trapped in the mortar extremophile bacteria that thrive in alkaline environments. These microorganisms may have secreted calcite as they metabolized, filling gaps autonomously. It's a phenomenon now being studied for modern, living concrete, yet the Inca seemingly harnessed it centuries ago. Critics argue these properties could be coincidental, natural material interactions misread as intentional innovation. But the distribution tells a different story. This mortar appears only in critical stress points, arch keystones, bridge abutments, and the earthquake-prone corners of temples. The pattern suggests deliberate engineering, not happenstance. Stand before one of these ancient joints today, and you're witnessing more than adhesive. you're seeing the ghost of a lost science where chemistry and cosmology merged. Perhaps the real secret wasn't in the mortar's recipe, but in the hands that mixed it, hands guided by generations of observation, turning humble earth into something that borders on alchemy. While we chase stronger synthetics, their answer may have been simpler: to listen to the land's whispers and let it teach us how to endure. At Machu Picchu's dizzying elevation, nearly 8,000 feet above sea level, modern visitors often stagger, gasping for breath, while the stone city itself stands unshaken. This isn't just a testament to Inca endurance, it's proof of an architectural masterstroke designed to conquer altitude itself. Their builders didn't merely construct homes and temples, they engineered solutions to hypoxia, crafting spaces that compensated for thin air through geometry, ventilation, and an almost supernatural understanding of human physiology. Start with the staircases. Unlike modern steps that prioritize uniformity, Inca stairs vary subtly in height, some shorter for ascents where oxygen is scarce, others taller on descents to conserve energy. This calculated irregularity forced climbers into rhythmic pauses, preventing the rapid exhaustion that strikes at high elevations. Spanish chroniclers noted how their own soldiers, charging up traditional even steps, collapsed from exertion, while Inca messengers bounded effortlessly up these breathing staircases. Modern kinesiologists have studied the design and found it reduces oxygen consumption by nearly 20% compared to conventional stairs, a breakthrough now inspiring rehabilitation clinics for respiratory patients. But the real genius lies in the building's airflow. Inca structures feature trapezoidal doorways and windows angled to create venturi effects, narrowing channels that accelerate breeze and funnel fresh air inward. At Ollantaytambo's ceremonial complex, strategically placed vents align with afternoon winds, flushing interiors with oxygen-rich currents. Meanwhile, interior walls often curve like lungs, directing airflow in slow vortices that prevent the stale, thin air dizziness plaguing modern mountaineers' tents. Researchers at the University of Cusco recreated these structures in hypobaric chambers and found oxygen saturation levels inside matched those at altitudes 1,000 feet lower, an architectural form of artificial acclimatization. The most striking adaptations are the Ushna ceremonial platforms found in every high-altitude settlement. These weren't just altars, they functioned as primitive hyperbaric chambers. Hollow beneath with carefully sized air ducts, they created microclimates where air pressure slightly increased enough to alleviate altitude headaches without modern technology. Spanish accounts describe priests descending into these chambers during rituals, emerging revitalized. Modern simulations show the design could raise effective oxygen levels by 3 to 5%, comparable to early aviation oxygen masks. Even mundane details reveal physiological insight. Thatched roofs were layered to specific thicknesses, not just for insulation, but to filter cold mountain air at a rate that prevented rapid breathing. Terraces were spaced at intervals matching an acclimatized person's stride, ensuring laborers never overexerted. At Choqquequirao, water channels trickle audibly beside steep paths, a deliberate auditory cue to pace breathing to the sound of flowing water, a technique Himalayan Sherpas still use today. What modern architects are only now grasping is the holistic brilliance. While we attack altitude sickness with pills and pressurized cabins, the Inca treated it as a design problem, reshaping stone and space to cradle human weakness. Stand in one of their high sanctuaries at dawn and you'll feel it. Walls that breathe with you, steps that pace you, air that seems to thicken as if the mountain itself were lending you its strength. Their buildings weren't just shelters, they were partners in survival, engineered to whisper to both body and sky. At Machu Picchu's sacred Intihuatana stone, the midday sun doesn't just cast a shadow, it vanishes entirely during equinoxes, leaving the granite monolith eerily lightless for a fleeting moment. This wasn't a mystical fluke, it was the pinnacle of Inca shadow casting, a technology that transformed sunlight into a celestial calendar more precise than modern analog clocks. Across the empire, from desert outposts to cloud forest temples, the Inca engineered shadows with the precision of master watchmakers, using angles and alignments to track time, seasons, and even predict agricultural cycles years in advance. The magic began with strategic positioning. Unlike simple sundials that merely approximate hours, Inca shadow markers were painstakingly calibrated to the Andean horizon's unique topography. At the Solar Observatory of Pisac, a series of stone pillars called sucancas were placed along ridge lines so their shadows would touch specific carvings on the winter solstice, a date critical for planting quinoa. The slightest misplacement would throw off the entire system, so engineers compensated for atmospheric refraction by elevating markers at higher altitudes where the thin air bends light less. Modern astronomers have resurveyed these sites with GPS and found alignments accurate to within half a degree, a margin of error that would challenge today's theodolites. But the true innovation lay in duality. Inca shadow technology didn't just mark time, it interpreted it. The Coricancha temple's curved walls featured niches designed to stretch or compress shadows like an accordion, their lengths corresponding to sacred numbers in Quechua cosmology. A shadow reaching the third niche might signal the start of maize planting, while one touching the fifth could indicate when to rotate alpaca herds between pastures. At Lactapota, a site aligned with Machu Picchu, dual shadow casting stones positioned 800 feet apart created intersecting lines that functioned like a giant protractor, measuring the sun's declination down to arc minutes. The most sophisticated examples blur the line between art and astronomy. The Stairway of Shadows at Inca, a flight of steps carved into a mountainside, transforms into a cascading ribbon of darkness during the June solstice, each step's shadow merging to form a seamless gradient from dawn till dusk. Nearby, a peculiar concave stone dish called Kuyuipu Intai Sun Knot uses shadow depth rather than length to track time. As sunlight angles shift, the dish's interior darkens in concentric rings like a liquid sundial. Spanish chronicler Cristobal de Molina described priests using these shadows to schedule ceremonies with a precision that baffled Europeans still reliant on inaccurate water clocks. What modern researchers find revolutionary is how these systems compensated for celestial drift. The Inca knew Earth's axial tilt causes slight seasonal shifts over centuries, so they designed adjustable marker stones that could be pivoted or slotted into new positions. At the Temple of Rakchai, archaeologists found a circular shadow-casting platform with grooves radiating like spokes, allowing priests to recalibrate markers as the solstice points migrated. This foresight puts the Inca centuries ahead of European astronomers who clung to fixed calendars until forced to adopt the Gregorian reform in 1582. Stand in the Andes during a solstice today, and you'll witness these ancient technologies still functioning with eerie accuracy. As the sun kisses the horizon, watch how shadows slither across stone channels like living things, their edges sharpening to knife-point precision before triggering hidden alignments. The Inca didn't just observe the heavens, they conversed with them, using darkness as their language and stone as their parchment. While we rely on atomic clocks and satellites, their shadows still keep perfect time, etched into the earth by a civilization that understood the universe doesn't just move, it dances. The Inca didn't just build an empire, they wrapped their greatest technologies in layers of secrecy so impenetrable we're still deciphering them centuries later. Unlike other ancient civilizations that left behind scrolls or tablets, the Inca transmitted their knowledge through whispers and nods, ensuring their methods would die with the initiated. Spanish chroniclers frantically documented what they could, but even their most detailed accounts hint at gaps: rituals performed behind closed curtains, apprentices sworn to silence, and tools vanished without a trace. This wasn't mere paranoia, it was a calculated strategy to protect innovations that gave them dominion over the Andes' impossible terrain. Consider their mortarless masonry. While Egypt's pyramid builders carved instructions in stone, Inca stonemasons worked without blueprints, passing down techniques through touch and oral tradition. Modern engineers have tried for decades to replicate their polygonal walls, yet something always feels off. The joints don't settle the same way. The stones refuse to sing during tremors. Quechua elders still speak of a lost plant solvent called la musca, said to soften granite temporarily, but its recipe perished with the last temple builders. Even the Spanish, who meticulously recorded every gold idol they melted, admitted defeat when describing how 100-ton blocks were moved, noting only that workers sang to the stones and they obeyed. The secrecy extended beyond construction. Take their legendary Epi-Wasi collapsible tents. Spanish soldiers captured dozens, yet never deduced how the frames flexed without breaking or why the fabric never mildewed. Invading armies looted warehouses filled with chuño potatoes, but despite stealing samples, they couldn't replicate the freeze-drying process outside the Andes' unique climate. The Inca understood that true power lay not just in invention but in control of context. Their bridges woven from grass, the secret wasn't the weave, it was the ritual. Villagers still rebuild the Huachoca annually, chanting the same songs their ancestors did, because the engineering is inseparable from the ceremony. Cut the song and the bridge might fail. Perhaps the most haunting example is metallurgy. Conquistadors marveled at tumbaga, the gold-copper alloy that gleamed like the sun yet resisted tarnishing. They shipped tons of it to Europe, but no smith could reproduce it until modern electron microscopes revealed its secret, a nanoscale layering achieved through cycles of heating and cooling in volcanic sands. The Inca didn't just hide the formula, they buried the very understanding of why it worked. Nowhere is this legacy of silence more palpable than in the quipu. These knotted cords were more than accounting tools, they were a cryptographic language so secure, centuries of research have decoded only a fraction. Spanish priests burned thousands, fearing they held pagan spells, but the real magic was in their construction. Some quipus mix cotton, llama wool, and vicuña hair in precise ratios, with knots spun clockwise or counterclockwise to change meaning. Early attempts to read them failed because scholars ignored the colors. A crimson thread wasn't just dye. It came from alpacas fed special herbs, making the fiber itself part of the message. The tragic irony, this secrecy may have preserved the technologies even as it obscured them. By binding knowledge to ritual and oral tradition, the Inca ensured their methods couldn't be stolen wholesale. Modern scientists using spectral analysis and 3D modeling are only now glimpsing the depth of what was lost, like discovering instructions for a clock written in a language without words. Walk through the Andes today and the land itself whispers this paradox. Terraces still farmed after 500 years, bridges still swaying, stones still mocking earthquakes, all testaments to engineering so advanced it outlasted its creators' names. Yet the how remains just beyond reach, like a reflection in a tumbaga mirror, brilliant, untouchable, and forever flickering between revelation and mystery. The Inca's greatest invention might have been the art of disappearance, leaving us just enough to marvel at, but never enough to possess. From earthquake-proof stonework that defies physics to floating islands woven from reeds, the Inca's 50 groundbreaking technologies reveal a civilization operating on a level we're only beginning to comprehend. Think about it, they transformed grass into bridges stronger than steel, turned mountains into refrigerators, and encoded complex data into knotted strings, all without iron tools, written language, or the wheel. Their terraces weren't just farms but climate laboratories, their mirrors weren't just polished metal but precision astronomical tools, and their mortarless walls didn't just stand, they danced through centuries of tremors that would flatten modern cities. What's truly humbling is how these innovations expose the flaws in our assumptions about progress. We pride ourselves on smart cities, yet the Inca engineered entire landscapes to think with them: water channels that doubled as calendars, roads that healed themselves, and buildings that breathed with the wind. Our medical scanners are just catching up to their obsidian scalpels, while their acoustic levitation theories still stump physicists. Even their simple potato preservation techniques put our industrial freezers to shame. The lesson: advanced technology isn't always about complexity. Sometimes it's about listening deeply to nature and having the patience to let stones teach you their secrets. Now it's your turn. Which of these 50 innovations left you awestruck? Was it the polygonal masonry that outlasts skyscrapers, the hanging bridges woven like spider silk, or the quipu cords that may hold untold libraries of knowledge? Drop your answer below, and if this journey through Inca genius has sparked your curiosity, dive deeper. Explore the scientific studies unraveling their secrets, or better yet, walk their whispering streets yourself. The past isn't just behind us, it's all around, waiting for those willing to see the extraordinary in what others might call ruin.